So let's go to Lauren Hope right now, who has a little bit more information on what those wind speeds are looking like at this time. Lauren, good morning.
Good morning. You know, we're at the point where every single hour we are getting updates on the position and the strength and forward speed of Hurricane Ian. And just 10 minutes from now is the 11 a.m. update. So that is going to be a full advisory. We'll get that new forecast cone as well. Winds are sustained at 155 miles per hour. That is a strong and Category 4 hurricane, hours away from landfall here in Southwest Florida. This will be the 7th Category 4 or 5 hurricane landfall in Florida since 1950. Of course, the last time that happened here was Irma back in 2017. Let's get you caught up on what you need to know heading into the next couple of hours. The live view from Naples continually showing conditions deteriorating. We're starting to see a lot more movement amongst the trees, amongst those palm trees as well. Sheets of rains associated with the outer feeder bands from Hurricane Ian continue to filter through. Look at the palm trees live from Punta Gorda farther north, where they were bracing for some of the worst of the winds in a matter of an hour or two. Live from Shore Point Health, you can see a lot of rain coming down as well. Not seeing all too much flooding on some of these roads quite yet. We know that the Lee County barrier islands already seeing a lot of flooding on the roads. Wind speeds coming in close to tropical storm force for many of those communities across the region. I want to share with you some of the latest wind gust reports. We had a wind gust in Naples of 69 miles per hour. This data straight from the National Weather Service. 62 mile per hour gust reported in Fort Myers already. 54 mile per hour gust for Punta Gorda. 53 mile per hour gust for Cape Coral. We're going to continue to expect those winds to ramp up and conditions to worsen heading into the afternoon as Hurricane Ian landfall nears closer toward our coast. We're still seeing the relatively calmer part of Hurricane Ian, the part of the storm, still 20 miles southwest of the coast of Charlotte County. So this is inching closer to the coast. We're still seeing that move off to the north at 10 miles per hour. Look at some of these estimated times when you could expect some of the worst of those hurricane force winds for some communities, perhaps major hurricane force winds. Bikili 1113, Matlacha 1120, at least the start of some of the heaviest rain. Placida 1126, Rotunda West 1129, 1138 for Rotunda and Minnesota Key 1150. So what you need to be doing right now is getting away from walls and windows. Treat this like a tornado warning. Get into a closet or a bathroom. Get as many walls in between you and this storm as possible. The entire peninsula under a flash flood watch as well. The impacts from Ian are going to extend well outside of the landfall, but let's talk about when landfall is expected. So we're still going to be dealing with these Nastar feeder bands heading into even noon, and at that point we see the eye wall just offshore from our coast continuing to perhaps stall out for just an hour or two. We could actually not technically see landfall until closer to 2, 3 o'clock this afternoon. From there, storm surge is the biggest concern. Storm surge can be deadly. It is typically the deadliest part of a hurricane. This is the biggest threat that Hurricane Ian will bring us. Yes, we are waiting on that catastrophic wind damage, but storm surge, that is the main reason those mandatory evacuations were asked. Now, what we'll see heading into Thursday morning, finally the rain and the wind starting to calm down, and conditions should gradually be improving in terms of the heavy rainfall and in terms of the damaging wind heading into Thursday night. But remember, storm surge, flash flooding, flooded roadways, that is still going to be a massive concern heading into the next couple of days. Projected rainfall totals still showing that the coast going to expect an additional 10 inches plus heading into the next 24 to 48 hours. As of right now, we're just waiting on, in a couple more minutes, that new 11 a.m. advisory will continue to break out the latest information that we get on Hurricane Ian. For now, I'm going to send things back to the desk. All right, thanks so much, Lauren. You know, we've been talking about, we've pulled our reporters and our crews off the roads because it's just not safe right now. But we do have crews that are able to report safely from outside.
That's right. So let's go ahead and get to Justin Hobbs, who's just outside of our studio on the side of Central Avenue. We met up with you about 45 minutes ago, Justin, and it seems like things are already starting to pick up just in the last 45 minutes.
Yeah, most certainly. We've definitely seen those winds really pick up out here along Central Avenue. I don't know if you just saw it right behind me that we just had a really nice gust pushed through. I've been kind of measuring sustained wind speeds between about 15 to 20 miles per hour right here at the surface. I do want to mention as well, ABC 7's chief meteorologist JP walked by earlier and told us that there is in fact a tree down along Fowler. Folks, this again, not the time to be out. Shelter in place at this point. I do want to take a view over here though. You can see we did have one of our palm fronds actually take a little bit of a hit over here. It's actually just right behind our building that we're standing in front of. But this tree palm is already on the ground. I'm worried about this pole right here. It's been shaking a lot as these gusts are continuing to push through. Of course, it's kind of coming in those waves. I'm not sure who's inside, who owns the Camaro, but probably want to start to, if anybody want to relay that back to the folks in the inside the building, if anyone owns that Camaro, whoever that is, might want to move it out of the way just in case this pole does end up going, because the winds, as we continue to see these gusts pushing further and further as the center of the storm's getting closer towards shore. Wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing a little bit more potential for poles like that to go down. It's just mesmerizing, though, seeing the winds, how much they are kind of just picking up at a sustained rate. We're kind of seeing that steady flow now, but 15 to 20 miles per hour. If you see those palm trees out in the distance just continuing to really push, and the clouds just moving at such a rapid speed, just kind of shows you this mere strength of in as it is approaching our coast. Again, folks, this is, I've been hearing through the IFB that we've seen folks out on the waters, out by the beaches. Get inside. It is not worth risking your life. We are in that shelter place right now, so make sure you're getting inside as we're still watching this storm approach the coast. This is not the strongest winds that we're seeing behind me. It only gets worse from here. So we're going to continue to keep you updated from outside of the building, live outside. Justin Hobbs, NBC2.
All right, thanks so much, Justin. We're going to go over to Brenna in the Alert Center. Again, Brenna, your Alert Center is a really cool tool to give us an idea of what's going on as far as live cameras and social media.
Certainly. We've got new pictures just in the last few minutes from Charlotte County here in your NBC2 Alert Center. Take a look here. This is the Emergency Operations Center in Charlotte County. The Sheriff's Office just posted these to Twitter a couple of minutes ago. As you can see, a lot of people working around the clock to make sure everyone is safe. We mentioned earlier that they are not responding to 911 calls because it's just too dangerous for first responders to be out there. But as you can see, they're still working. So if you call 911, they said in this tweet, they'll be taking the calls and then prioritizing them when it's safe to respond. So they're not going to respond to you right away, but they're going to develop some kind of system where they'll respond to you as soon as they can, and it's going to go based on priority, not first come, first serve. So keep that in mind. We've got a look in Charlotte County on Sat 27 if we want to see live conditions. This is Englewood Beach. As you can see, it's windy, rainy, but it's not as much water on the sand that we were seeing on Fort Myers Beach. So as the storm does continue to move north, we're going to keep track of this and see if that changes. I'm going to ask my producer if we want to go to Sat 30. It looks like Sat 30 has changed, so we're going to change that. I'm walking around on the other side of my desk to look at what we're looking at here. We've lost that source, so we'll keep here in Charlotte County. I'll keep tracking this, and if I get that live shot back, I'll let you guys know.
All right, Brenna, thanks. And here we are once again, top of the hour.
Yep, and getting ready for another shift change. Chief Meteorologist for NBC2, Allison Ray, is in. And Allison, you just got that 11 o'clock advisory in.
Yeah, we just got it. We're waiting for it to be entered into our computer systems here. Yeah, shift change. We have all the meteorologists in-house. We're behind the scenes kind of exchanging information of what they've seen overnight, what we're expecting to see over the next few hours. And over the next few hours, we're expecting this to make landfall in Southwest Florida. The impacts we've already noticed. We've already noticed some substantial flooding in some areas. And to be honest, it's just only going to increase as we head through the rest of the day. Conditions will continue to deteriorate. So I am going to try to refresh this graphic to make sure it gets updated to the 11 o'clock advisory. But one thing to note is that the pressure is still very low. And yesterday we were talking about the possibility of this being a Category 4. I think that, or a Category 5, that eyewall replacement cycle has really set this up to be such a strong, powerful storm, just flirting with Category Category 5 status. The 11 o'clock advisory, I read it. It's not in our system just yet, but it is not Category 5. We're still 2 miles per hour shy of that, but that should just give you an idea of how strong this storm is and the wind field that continues to intensify for the next few hours. So what to expect for areas like Cape Coral, for Pine Island, for Sanibel, Captiva. The winds will continue to get stronger and stronger. We've timed out some of the eye wall kind of pushing on in here to St. James City at 10 or so. So we're a little bit behind schedule. Let me actually step off screen real fast and put this into motion a little bit more ahead as we kind of change shifts, and also we're kind of changing graphics here and trying to make sure everything is up to date. So this is not in just yet, but it is approaching parts of Cape Coral, seeing those rain bands move on in. Rob Duns, do you have a microphone on? Are you seeing that new advisory? It's not in yet, but they have put it down through parts of the National Hurricane Center. Making that cone still includes parts of Cape Coral and also kind of that bullseye there through parts of Charlotte County. Now, we just got some images. I was just off screen talking with Kelly Burns, and we have some images of the Charlotte Harbor Wall. That water has been pushed out. Sometimes we see that with those strong winds offshore. We're starting to see that water leave. At the same time, areas in Estero Bay and Naples and Cape Coral and Pine Island Sound, all this water, these southerly winds are going to continue to push the water in. We will see those winds turn later on tonight, well after landfall. Once the storm continues to push off to the northeast, the winds will return for Charlotte Harbor. So take no comfort in the fact that that water is being pushed out and it is dry. That water will quickly return later on this afternoon. The eye wall is large and is very strong. We have very strong winds and rainfall to the north of this. So as this pushes onshore in that northeasterly direction, we will continue to have that real strong wind and more flooding potential just from rainfall on top of the rainfall, the water increasing from that storm surge. What I am going to do is toss it back over to Kelly and Peter. We're going to do a little bit more analysis because the advisory is a little slow to come in. I want to make sure that you have all the information that we have. So we'll be back in just a few minutes as we dive into this a little bit more.
Welcome to our continuous coverage, and we are committed to stay on the air for you right now to show you and give you all the information you need to stay safe, to check on your property, to know what is happening as this hurricane brushes our coast.
We are experiencing this hurricane the same way that you are. We live in this community. We love this community. We have property. We have families here. We understand that this is a very stressful day. But as Kelly mentioned, our job today is to keep you informed and help you have the latest information so that you know what's going on, because we don't want you going outside right now. We want you to stay right here with NBC2.
And our team of meteorologists back here, there's no one better. Trust us. You can trust them.
So Peter Bush and Kelly Burns here taking over. We're going to start showing you some video, again, to just keep you informed what's going out in our community right now. This is video of Edison Bridge, North Fort Myers area. The winds obviously whipping up, and we're not even to the part where the hurricane force winds are in this part of Lee County yet. The worst is yet to come for Lee and Charlotte counties.
We have some new video now off of Cypress Lake Drive in Winkler, and you can see the wind is already blowing. Okay, we just have the new advisory. Let's go over to JP, who's going to break down exactly where the new information is for the track of the storm.
We have on our ABC, which one is that? Is that links 1 that the advisory is in? Put it in 2. Can we get links 2 up here? And we just got this in. Again, put the advisory up there if you can. The 11 o'clock that just came in. The winds are still 155 miles per hour. Again, this is the brand new 11 o'clock advisory. 26.3 north, 82.5 west. The eye of the hurricane is just off to our southwest. It's approaching the barrier islands of Lee and Charlotte County. We're really starting to see those winds pick up there. The movement north-northeast at 9. The direction has been the same for the past 12 to 18 hours, but the forward progress is a little bit less than it has been. Category 4 storm right now weakening to a Category 3 storm as we get over the afternoon and it makes landfall. And then after landfall, it will quickly weaken, head through central Florida and then out into the Atlantic. But this is a 155-mile-per-hour high-end Category 4 storm right now, and it is pointed right to us and should be making landfall here in the next few hours. So we are watching this very, very closely. Of course, the biggest threat right now is the storm surge. And here on our live radar from Fort Myers, we have a really good look at the outer eye wall of that storm. We have a track on here. This, by the way, is a band of the heaviest rain and the wind, and you see all this lightning. That is a sign of a very strong hurricane and a very strong, well-defined eye wall here, and a very powerful eye wall. So 11:08 Flamingo Bay, Port Boca Grande at 11:27, Pineland at 11:29, Bokeelia at 11:43. I'm going to run down the whole list here for everybody that's listening on radio as well. Burnt Storm Marina at 12:34, Englewood 12:41, Punta Gorda at 1:34, Northport 1:35, Port Charlotte 1:42, and Arcadia at 4:07. So this is going to be moving off to the northeast. Again, right now it's moving at 9 miles per hour. Here's the storm surge forecast threat. 12 to 18 feet in this area of purple that you see here. That runs from Fort Myers Beach all the way up on Pine Island, the western side of Cape Coral, all the way up the Lee Island coast, Captiva, Cayo Costa in that, all the way up through Charlotte Harbor and up towards the western side of the Cape Hayes Peninsula, the southern side, and the like. So storm surge is going to be our biggest threat. Our Gullwing and Diamond Head Beach Resorts camera here at Fort Myers Beach. This has been going in and out. It comes and it goes as we get these wind gusts. You're going to see the power flicker from time to time. The power may actually go out for a bit. This is Short Point Health in Punta Gorda. Looking across the Peace River here, you can see that the palm trees are blowing and it is getting a bit gustier here. And this condition is going to worsen as that hurricane gets a little bit closer to Charlotte Harbor and the Punta Gorda area. This is the Naples Grand Beach Resorts. Again, trees blowing around here. And we're looking at these bands of heavy rain to wrap around the center of that storm. So far at the Naples Grand Beach Resort, where we just showed you that camera, 80 mile an hour. That's a hurricane force gust. Just happened a few moments ago at 10:54. There's an 81 that just happened. It's 11:07 right now, so this just happened about 6 minutes ago at Sanibel Harbor. Marco Island at Tommy Barfield Elementary School. You've seen 44 so far. And again, this one just happening not too long ago at the Punta Gorda Airport, a 61 mile an hour wind gust. And these are going to continue to increase as that storm gets closer and closer to us. One of the kind of newer tools, but a really nice tool to have, is this power outages product that we get. And it tracks in semi-real time how many power outages we have currently. You see here 50,000 across Collier County, 42,000 in Lee County, 10,000 people about without power around Charlotte County, and I don't know where that 1,000, I'm assuming the 1,000 is over here in DeSoto County. So we are going to start to see some of these power outages increase. You know, this is a powerful Category 4 hurricane that's coming through, and we are going to see those power outages occur off and on, especially out here by the beaches. This is what we've seen so far over the last 24 hours from this storm. And again, we still have a heavy rain event, especially on the northern and western side of that storm. So far, we've seen 7 inches plus of rain. This is right around Naples Park. As you go diagonally southeast, we're looking at 6 to 7 to even close to 8 inches of rain, and we're already starting to see some flooding from those rain totals. Now here, as we go off to the north, not quite as much rain, but still 4 inches around the north side of Pine Island near Bokeelia, around Sanibel, about 3.2, 4.4 as you get into Bonita Springs and North Naples, and Immokalee about 3.5. Over here inland, Clewiston, Moorhaven, you've seen about almost 4 inches of rain. Same thing in northern Glades County as well. This is a look at the hurricane. Again, looping it over the past several minutes. I do not like to see a lot of lightning in the eye wall. That's what we're seeing here. Very powerful winds are within this eye wall. And notice how that wraps around the western side of the system. So the worst winds are going to be on the north eye wall and on the western eye wall. We're still going to see strong winds on the eastern side of this eye wall, but it's not going to be the 155 that you're seeing out here. Certainly 100-mile-an-hour plus winds are possible right along this eastern eye wall. This right in here is the heaviest portion of that eye wall, and again, tracking it off to the northeast, Port Boca Grande 1127, Pineland 1129, 1143 Bokeelia, Burnstone Marina at 1234, Englewood 1241. Punta Gorda at 134, Northport 135, Port Charlotte 142, and Arcadia at 407. So it's 1110 right now. Those times, especially once you get up towards Englewood, so you've got, let's see, 1241, it's 1110 right now. That's about an hour and a half from right now in Englewood. You're going to start to see some of those really strongest of the winds with that outer eye wall, that northern eye wall. In Punta Gorda, 134. Port Charlotte at 142, so that's about 2 hours or so from right now. Again, that's how it's looking with this forward speed at 9 miles an hour. This may slow down 1 or 2 miles an hour. This may speed up 1 or 2 miles an hour. So take these as guidance. Don't necessarily, at least at this point in time, take that as gospel as to exactly when those winds are going to get into your neighborhood. Once again, Hurricane Ian at 11 o'clock, still a 155-mile-an-hour Category 4 storm. Very strong Category 4 storm. If this were to go up just a little bit, it would be a Cat 5. And you can see there on your television screen the eye wall just to the west-southwest of, we'll say, the western side of Sanibel there, and headed for southwest Florida. We'll send it back over to Rob Duns. We're going to send it over to Rob. He's got some more perspective from the NBC2 First Alert Hurricane Tracking Center. Rob.
All right, thank you very much, John. I wanted to give you a few live looks outside here as JP was giving you a great analysis of the radar, the most recent information from the 11 a.m. advisory with maximum sustained winds still holding at 155 miles per hour. This is a live look right now from the city of Fort Myers, just north of Winkler Avenue, very close to Fowler as well. You can notice, again, the camera is shaking around there pretty good. Haven't seen any major damage other than I did notice one tree had fallen over near the Fowler Street area in the city of Fort Myers. There's a live look at the Caloosahatchee. I believe they're trying to look at the water levels there in that perspective. So obviously all you're noticing right now is just some water moving around in the Caloosahatchee, but that's probably the most captivating image of the moment. A live look from the top floor of the Diamond Head Resort on Fort Myers Beach. That angle is looking toward the north, so that appendage that looks like it's put out from the island there, that of course is the fishing pier. And if you look real closely, it looks like the water's been able to come all the way up to the seawalls there for those homes on Fort Myers Beach. As of right now, it's tough to tell from the perspective, but it looks like the roads right now are passable, but no one needs to be outside anymore. The time to shelter in place is now, because this hurricane's landfall will be occurring in the next few hours. In inland communities, you're not prone to storm surge here, but you still have to be on guard for damaging winds over the next few hours. That's a live look right now from Babcock Ranch and Founders Square, where again a lot of folks are hunkered down here as we look live from that part. And here's another look at our inland areas, Lehigh Acres in the eastern side of Lee County. Again, see some rain, you see some wind, but nothing out of control, at least right now. But remember, as John just showed you a few moments ago, the eye of this Category 4 hurricane, is just off of our coast. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch this over to the interactive hand tracker. Switch up this system here, and I'll try to do this here manually from the wall. Perspective, it's always important to keep things in mind here. From the city of Cape Coral right now, the outer eye wall is really, really very, very close now. If we were to see like where the downtown Cape Coral area is at here off of Cape Coral Parkway, I mean, the brunt of this hurricane is about 25 miles or less off to the west and southwest of you, as the core of these really, really intense winds are getting very close now to the Lee County barrier islands and areas up here toward the southern side of the Cape Hayes Peninsula. This is a look at the radar reflectivity that you're most familiar with, of course, but we were able to analyze the winds here in the same manner as if we're looking for a tornado. So what I want to do is switch some products up here. So what this one is doing is looking for velocity or spin, or in the, essentially the speed in the atmosphere. And remember that the radar beam is fairly out at this particular point in view, But if we were to pixel query some points here, we're going to see some pretty incredible winds. That's right now showing evidence of 140-mile-per-hour winds up and above the Earth's surface. Remember, these radar beams are shot out at an angle, so the farther away you are from the radar site, the higher in the storm you are, and the faster the winds are going to be. But right now, based on the distance, and again for some perspective, where we're seeing evidence aloft of 140-mile-per-hour winds, that is now less than 50 miles to the west of Sanibel Island. Remember that the hurricane right now is moving to the north-northeast at 10 miles per hour. So the hurricane itself is moving in this direction. So the core of these really, really fast winds that are very, very evident right now on Doppler radars here up and down the Gulf Coast is moving off to that north-northeast direction. So it looks like the brunt of that may very well move on shore into areas of Sarasota, if not areas of western western Charlotte County, again, inside the next 3 to 4 hours. So you need to be hunkered down in your safe space here for the remainder of the afternoon until we're able to see some improving weather here, but that is going to be a long ways off in the future based on how things are looking right now. This switches back up to the radar composite. I'm going to send things over to Chief Meteorologist Allison Ray. Control Room Allison Ray's on Doppler 1 at the Weather Touch. Allison?
Yeah, so it's interesting to see how far north this storm has moved from yesterday. So this is approaching our coastlines. The good news, if there's not much good news here, but the good news is that it's not going to stall out there for hours and hours and hours. We will get a landfall over the next 2 to 4 hours. And we were with you yesterday and we're saying we need this to get on land and out of here as soon as possible. The faster the storm moves, the lower the storm surge potential would be. With that said, that's all relative. The storm surge potential is still extremely high and in fact continues to increase. We are at that worst case scenario. When we see those worst case scenario graphics and we said, hey, this is a reasonable worst case scenario, this is not the forecast, those two are interchangeable at this time based on where this is going to make landfall. So as it continues to push closer to Charlotte Harbor, we're just about 28 miles from the front edge, or really the back edge of the strongest thunderstorm on the northeast quadrant of the storm. One thing to note, and we were with you last night tracking a lot of tornado warnings, as we go through the next few hours and this makes landfall, we are going to run into possibly some more tornado warnings as well. That is on top of the really powerful winds that we're seeing with the center of the storm. So like Rob mentioned, this is no time to get in your car and head out. It's time to stay in place and find the safest place that you can within your home as the storm pushes on through. It will be a few hours. You're probably going to lose power, specifically in the areas in Charlotte County and Lee County as these powerful winds come on through. Stay with your radio. We are on radio. We will walk you through the rest of the storm as it makes its way through our region. Lots of lightning to go through. The storm won't weaken until it gets on land because it is so powerful. We do see that lightning extend all the way around the center of the storm. Now, we put 30 miles to the back edge of that initial thunderstorm line. We have about 45 miles to go to the center of the storm. And remember, this is moving off to the north-northeast at about 10 miles per hour. So we have a couple of hours here to walk this through parts of Charlotte County and into Sanibel and into Pine Island. Zooming into DeSoto County, your winds are picking up. That rainfall is picking up. The rainfall will be confusing to see later on today. What's rain, what's salt water, what's rising. Total inundation could be concerning for the rest of tonight and into tomorrow. We do have some light showers, not as much lightning right now through parts of Port Charlotte, but here comes that first real strong band into North Captiva and St. James City. So even if you're in Southwest Cape, any part of Cape Coral right now, you want to be in the safest part of your home. That would be away from windows. I know we said, hey, if you feel safe, take some pictures. Not now, not in Cape Coral, not in Pine Island, not in Matlacha. You want to be in your home and in your safe spot. This is the initial real, if you think you've seen the winds pick up, this is going to be the first real strong one headed over at 11:29 for parts of North Captiva even right now. Farther to the south, this is where we're going to start to see some storm surge problems from Marco Island over to Everglades City. You're seeing those onshore winds. So Golden Gate, you're dry right now, and the rainfall potential will start to diminish. Remember yesterday we said, hey, the rainfall potential will start to go down. That doesn't mean we're in the clear. Now the storm surge potential is going up. And as that storm pushes off to the north and east, that same thing will happen. The brunt of the storm around the Caloosahatchee and off to the north. Look how much more rain is headed your way on top of those strong winds. And then we're going to add in the storm surge later on tonight and into tomorrow. It's not going to be until tomorrow that we've really seen what Ian has done to our community. So we're going to be watching this. So we have those near 9 double-digit rainfall totals yet to come. As this pushes off to the northeast, whoever runs into this white band, that's where we could see well over a foot of additional rainfall to what we've had. One thing to note, and a lot of times with hurricanes, as they make their way closer to, or really a lot of hurricanes, they're a little asymmetrical, right? They're not always perfectly symmetrical. One side is a lot stronger than the other. Notice that we have 140-mile-per-hour winds. These are just estimates on each side of the eye wall. Because that eye wall has just as strong winds on one side than the other, that tells me that we're not going to see this storm weaken at all before it makes landfall. Storms, big storms like Irma and Katrina, both powerful, destructive storms, weaken just a little bit before landfall. This one's not. This one's going to stay strong. It's holding at just shy of Category 5 status. So that was a remarkable pressure drop, and that had to do with that eye wall replacement we talked about yesterday. Sometimes that eye wall replacement can benefit you if it takes a long time to do, but this one completed its eye wall recycle and came out even stronger in the end. So how strong are these winds going to be? This is going to be how strong we could see these winds through Port Charlotte, Northport, 130 miles per hour. That's going to be pretty incredible and devastating potentially. Arcadia, we're at 122. So even inland, because you're going to see that eye wall push into DeSoto County, Arcadia, I know you're inland, but you're going to have these really powerful winds when the storm comes on through. Farther to south, Eden LaBelle, 78 miles per hour. Babcock Ranch, 106 miles per hour. North Fort Myers, almost 120 miles per hour. The Caloosahatchee will see their waters rise in the coming hours. After that landfall, the waters will start to move up farther into the Caloosahatchee. Farther to the south, even places like Iona, Shell Point, over to Sanibel, 140, 150 mile per hour wind gusts are going to be possible. As we head farther inland, you're still seeing some gusty winds. Think about a severe thunderstorm warning. This is going to be the longest time of these winds continuing. When I was in Hurricane Michael 4 years ago, one thing to notice, these winds just continue, and it's not like a tornado so much where it just all happens in an instant. It's just kind of the slow deterioration of things happening. So just stay inside and stay safe as the storm continues to push off to the north. 86 miles per hour into North Naples, that's going to be possible. We are seeing those storm surge totals increase. Coming up, we're going to have more analysis of the storm pushing on in, but also later on tonight after landfall, that storm surge is going to continue to increase. And coming up, we'll dive more into that of what we're seeing and what we're expecting in parts of Lee and Charlotte counties and Collier too, with that storm surge increase and the potential from the National Hurricane Center this morning. Guys.
And we are tracking not only the threat for those high winds, but you hear us on occasion say, get into your safe place. So I want to take a moment here and get you a little bit more on where that is in your house. So as you slice open your house, if you have a room, something like this on the interior of your house, like a small bathroom or a small closet, you want those walls close together because you want that support of those walls up against your ceiling, because if something were to happen and your roof got compromised, like if a tree were to fall on it, you want that support to hold the ceiling together above your head. And a large room doesn't do that as well as a small room does. So if you have that, that is certainly the best. An interior room away from windows, a small room for better support in case something does happen to the roof. You still have that support there of your ceiling beneath the roof. Something like a laundry room or a closet or a bathroom. That's the best location. And if you don't have that, like my house in particular doesn't have that, if you have an exterior touching room, but also small with no windows. Like in my house, it's a laundry room and it's a walk-in closet. So those are some safe places. You mainly want a small room with no windows. When we say go to your safe place, that's where you want to go. And that's going to be especially important if you're watching out toward the western side of Lee County and Charlotte County and in DeSoto County and in southern Sarasota County and into our viewing area. That's going to be one of the most important pieces of information that you need to stay safe as the storm approaches and passes through southwest Florida as we go through the afternoon. Storm surge, as we just saw there on Fort Myers Beach, is already happening, and it's that push of the hurricane on top of the Gulf of Mexico creating this wave. And as Allison mentioned, it's gradual. This is a gradual process. We saw on camera here, I'll go back and show you again, we're already starting to see a little bit of this storm surge here at Fort Myers Beach. These waves are already crashing, and from time to time, we lose the internet signal of this camera, and it looks like that's exactly what's happening right now. But it goes in and out, as you would expect. It is really windy here at Fort Myers Beach. I'm going to hang on this for a moment, see if it comes back. It is frozen for the time being. But you can see even in that frozen picture how choppy that Gulf of Mexico is. That's those waves starting to build already, and this is going to get worse as the storm, even after the storm leaves and passes by, because we're going to have that push from the southwest, just perfectly perpendicular just about to our beaches. And that's kind of like the worst case scenario for storm surge. A landfall just north of most of southwest Florida, and that water is crashing onshore from the southwest. This is a product that this company that we partner with, Q-Risk, they take that forecast from the National Hurricane Center and they create a product to show above water inundation. So this is their forecast model that they run based off of the Hurricane Center's forecast for storm surge. So what we're looking at here is above ground water. So all the way up to the East Trail here in Naples and Collier County, we can see about 3 feet of inundation. I know the storm surge forecast is higher than that, and you saw some red around the 10,000 Islands. That would be 9 feet of inundation. So we are looking at terrible storm surge flooding, not only along the coast of Collier County, but especially as you get up closer to where those stronger winds are in Lee County and in Charlotte County. This area of purple right in here, that's 12 to 15 feet of inundation. The storm surge forecast is higher than that, as you saw, but the inundation, I mean, our scale doesn't even go up that high. We've shown a few products here that the values are so high that we don't have the scale for it, or we don't have the color palette for it, because particular values are so high, and we rarely, if ever, see those. And so this area right in here is 12 to 15 feet. The red is 9, and then 3 to 6 feet of inundation all the way over to US 41 and across Iona-McGregor. Sanibel, Lighthouse Beach, again, that purple area here, right around 12 to 15 feet, 6 to 9 feet across most of the rest of Sanibel, and then out toward Captiva as well. Pine Island, here's St. James City, Flamingo Bay, in that 6 to 9 foot inundation. Southwestern side of Cape Coral here near the Westin. We have a camera right here at the Westin at Cape Coral. They are in that 12 to 15 feet right there at the beach, right there, or I should say right at the coastline there with the Caloosahatchee, and then pushing inland, and a lot of the Southern Cape in that 3 to 6 foot category, 9 feet as you approach the Caloosahatchee and Pine Island Sound in those areas. And when you're forcing water from the Gulf of Mexico or even the mouth of the Caloosahatchee, look how wide it is down here, and then it narrows considerably as you approach Bayshore and Olga. So we've been showing the storm surge warning, and it includes all of Lee County, but when you get to Charlotte and Collier County, it's only the coastal areas. And this is the reason why. It's because of the Caloosahatchee cutting across the county. And look at the storm surge potential here for this area near Bayshore. The inundation could be 12 to 15 feet, pushing all the way up towards Bayshore Road. And then we've got another little area here near the boathouse, if you know where that is, on State Road 31, right near the Lee Civic Center. The river there, that area could also see 12 to 15 feet of inundation, because you're funneling that water and forcing it to go into a narrower area, and that forces that water level to be higher than it would a little bit downstream where the river is a little bit wider. As we go into Charlotte County, you can see that's that inundation potential again, right around 6 to 9 feet. So again, the storm surge forecast is higher than this, but when you take into account elevation of these particular areas, this is what we're looking at for inundation for the water to come on shore. And look here, same thing that we just explained with the Caloosahatchee, the same thing is going to happen with the Peace River and somewhat with the Myakka River, but the Myakka River cuts off to the northwest. The water's going to want to go this way, off to the northeast, because it's coming in from the Gulf of Mexico. So that's why the Peace River here is all in purple. That's an opportunity to have inundation of 12 to 15 feet. So this is why we've been so concerned about the storm surge event. Yes, we're going to have high winds. Yes, we're going to have some heavy rain bands, but it's this storm surge. Again, you can see right here as we zoom in on the Peace River, that potential there as you head toward the DeSoto County line. So that's what we're looking at for storm surge and inundation. And now we're going to send it over back to NBC2. We're going to go over to Rob Duns and see what he's got here, a little bit more on the storm.
All right, thank you very much, John. I'm going to walk over to the weather wall here. I wanted to spend a little bit of time and further elaborate on what John was talking about in terms of the surge. Right now, again, the center of this hurricane is sitting just offshore, but you have to remember how the air is moving in very different directions around the hurricane. Right now, in areas like Charlotte Harbor and the western side of Charlotte County, the air is still moving offshore, moving in that direction, while in points south of the eye, the winds have already turned onshore. And it's in areas like Fort Myers Beach that we've been showing you those live pictures from, the water rise like from the Diamond Head Resort. Real substantial storm surge is now starting here because the winds have turned offshore. But I want to stress here for folks in Charlotte County right now, again, because of where you're located in proximity to the eye of this hurricane right this moment, the water is being pulled out of Charlotte Harbor and out of the Peace River. So what I'm going to do is walk over to this weather wall here. I wanted to show you some cameras. Here at NBC2 and ABC7, we have a network of cameras all over Southwest Florida. And the one I wanted to show you in particular is this one here in Charlotte County. So this camera that you're seeing right now is from the Shore Point Health Center. So this is off of Marion Avenue, just to the east of downtown Punta Gorda. I wanted to pan, and just going to do this on the fly here, if you would. We're just going to pan to the left because I was noticing something that looks like the water levels in the river have dropped really, really substantially. And I think in someone with a microphone, shout out if you see something different than I do, but it certainly looks like that right now there could be enough of a water pull out of the river here in this part of the Peace River where you see this brown shading. I think that's almost totally dry. And you know, again, the wind is pushing offshore. You can see the direction of the trees here.
That is just sand right
now. The wind right now is pushing this direction and it's going offshore. So it looks, you know, from this perspective, that we have dry ground right now.
Up until that channel marker, which is probably about 100 feet out.
Yeah, so when you think about that, that's pretty remarkable. You know, this part of the Peace River isn't terribly deep, but, you know, in order for the water to pull out that fast, that's a lot of water that's moving around here. So these boats, you know, they could be in a bit of trouble here over the next few hours as the water levels are going to change pretty drastically over the next few hours. Since we're here, and I'm maneuvering this camera on the fly here, across the way is that new Sunseeker resort that they're building. And of course, there are some gigantic cranes. And during Hurricane Irma, something that we noticed, especially over in Miami, was these cranes were swinging all over the place because when hurricanes move through, they design the cranes to move freely. So why don't we try to zoom in here just for a moment and see if we notice any movement with those cranes. That again is looking across the Peace River here. Move this a bit more to the right. It looks like the cranes are holding steady right now, but as long as we have electricity in Charlotte County, that's something I'd like to make sure that we keep an eye on here because, again, we're noticing a pretty substantial change in the water levels in the Peace River.
And they keep those cranes up because it's actually safer to have them dangling like that rather than taking them down and having them blow around. So
the next view I wanted to show you is a bit farther down the coastline. So now we're in the city of Fort Myers. Now, right now, the water levels here are, or rather the camera is zoomed in at the water levels, but what I wanted to do here live is just to pull this out. If you're familiar with the downtown river district, you know, just a few was just a few weeks ago, they opened that new band shell in the outdoor auditorium. This is that little fishing pier that runs out from the River District in Fort Myers. So if you're familiar with what it looks like on a normal day, you can see how much the water levels have risen. And that's because in the Fort Myers area and areas of Lee County, the winds are now turning onshore. Let me jump back over here to the radar again. Again, if you're in the Fort Myers area, for you, the winds are now moving in this direction. They're pushing the water up into areas like the Caloosahatchee and into parts of Estero Bay. So the water levels are going to start to rise now in areas around Fort Myers Beach, and Sanibel because of the way the air is pushing these masses of water around here. Let's zoom this out a bit further since we still have electricity right now in downtown Fort Myers. Looks like things are okay on land, at least for the time being. Yeah, but that's something to watch there because this storm surge component is really going to get high speed here as this event continues to unfold over the next few hours.
Rob,
Peter?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Because I know this has been the main threat with this storm, and I'm looking at a graphic that you posted last night on NBC2 and ABC7 about the high tide and the low tide and how the worst case scenario would be the onshore winds coinciding with high tide. And I'm looking at the graphic Point Ebell, for example. The next high tide is 3:11 p.m. Are we getting lucky that this seems to be a little bit earlier, or is this going to be in this onshore pattern for the next few hours?
A change in the last 12 hours is that it appears the storm is moving a little faster than it looked like was possible about 12 hours ago. So I'm trying to pull up that Lee County tide graphic. I can't see it here at the tip of my fingers.
So you've got 3:11 for Point Ebell. Little Hickory Island was just before 6 o'clock. So a question on our viewers' minds is they're keeping, as they're thinking about potential worst case scenario storm surge, might we catch a little break with the timing not lining up with the high tide?
I think it's fair to say there could be a little bit of a break, but by no means let your guard down here. For folks in Charlotte County, you still have a ways to go here. And of course, it depends on where the eye makes landfall. But the high tide cycles in Charlotte County don't arrive until after 4 o'clock this afternoon. For the Englewood, Lemon Bay area, high tide is several hours away, not until 4 o'clock. And for downtown Punta Gorda, high tide is not until 6 o'clock this evening. So there's a lot to go around here before we start to let guard off on anybody.
I'm not too concerned, honestly. The high tide, I mean, it's gonna give here or there a little bit, but I have to say that let's go to Doppler 1 at the wall. It's still going to be multiple feet of water moving into our region, so I mean, maybe we'll save a couple of inches, 6 inches, maybe up to a foot, but we're still talking about this water moving into substantial parts of our homes and parts of our coastal communities. I have this on a time lapse, and I do want to make a little announcement before more people start losing power. So write these down. These are the radio stations that we're streaming on. You can listen to us if your power goes out. We will be here until this storm passes, until this threat goes on. So we're going to be here overnight and through tomorrow as well. So this is going to be 96.1, 103.9, 98.1, and Sunny 106.3. Those are just several of them. B103.9, I did mention that. So we have several of these radio stations that will be on streaming for the rest of the day through tomorrow because we will expect more power outages. We've already seen that. This is a time lapse of the past 6 hours, and a couple of things to note from it is that within last night into this morning, we did see a big jump. I left last night, I came in this morning, and I had to readjust all of my maps to be much farther north. That's a good sign because it's moving. I will say in the past hour, it is just doing this little bit of a wobble just offshore. So it's just kind of staying out here for the past hour or two. And remember, that's what I was looking at last night with one of our computer models suggesting that it just kind of wobbles out here for a few hours. Each hour, we're tracking how this storm gets closer to our coastlines, and we need it to keep getting closer and closer. We've seen a big jump into the overnight hours, but the past 2 hours is just staying out here a little bit and staying pretty well organized. And the lightning count, I don't have the lightning turned on in this view, but the lightning count continues. It's starting to get at that little bit of land interaction, but until the center of this storm, that core of the hurricane is disrupted, it's going to stay on the powerful side because we still are pretty warm and in this really tropical environment to keep the storm going. Sanibel, St. James City, South Seas, up through North Captiva, you're seeing the brunt of this outer edge of the eye wall right now. South Seas 1144, just a few more minutes of some of the stronger winds. This will then move into Pine Island. This will then move into Matlacha. And because it's only moving at about 10 miles per hour, you're going to be dealing with these very strong winds for about an hour, and then we'll get into that eye wall. That eye wall will be a time to relax and catch your breath, and then the back edge of the storm will come. The problem with this back edge of the storm is that it's just as powerful as the front edge of the storm. So we're not going to see too much of a difference for the back edge than farther to the north. Look at the lightning. We're at 21 lightning strikes within the past 15 minutes. Cape Coral just starting to see some light showers push on in. Maybe Rob, do we have a video of that Cape Coral camera?
Let me take a look for it. Give me a moment.
On top of the west in there. I did time out the back edge of this line, the front part of the back edge of the eye. So let's time this out and notice the time here moving off to the north-northeast, and that's assuming that it's going to stay at 10 miles per hour. Placida at 512. That's when this front part of the back edge of the eye will be moving through. It's not even noon right now, so we are going to have these high winds stick around for a while. Englewood, you'll start to see the second part of the back edge of that eye by 512, Rotunda West at 512, and Rotunda at 522. All the while this is occurring, we have a few hours for this to push off. All the while, this water is streaming into Estero Bay, into Cape Coral, into the Caloosahatchee. Now, Charlotte Harbor, like Rob mentioned, it's dry. 12 hours from now, that's not going to be the case. Now, what about the edge? When are we really going to be done with some of the really strong winds, the core of the storm? We're not until 6, 7 o'clock. And you're going to see a bunch of times going through today, and they're all going to be a little bit different. And you're like, well, that one was an hour before. That one was an hour later. We're giving you a kind of an idea here because, one, the timing of the storm could change. And two, we're kind of individually timing out just a couple of miles here or there different parts of the storm. So just kind of take how this is going to take a few hours to go on through, and conditions will continue to deteriorate here. I did want to time out this band of showers moving into downtown Fort Myers, into Shell Point, just before about 1 o'clock or so. Fort Myers Beach at 1 o'clock. If you are on any of these barrier islands, you cannot leave. I mean, we've been saying that really across much of the region in general. You need to make sure that you're in a safe place. Fort Myers Beach, Fort Myers at 210. So that would be downtown Fort Myers. And notice how, because of the wind direction, this is just funneling in. So you see, like near Punta Rasa, how it curves like that. The water is just kind of catching right here, like holding a cup. It just has nowhere to go except for right there. What's in its way is Cape Coral. That's the next land interaction with all this water pushing through the Sanibel Causeway and into parts of southwestern Cape Coral, and also right around Shell Point and Fort Myers Beach as well. Rob, did you have that camera?
So for the control room, Doppler 2 is our quick source here. This camera is frozen right now, so it's possible that we have lost electricity at the Westin in the city of Cape Coral. Yeah. But something else I wanted to direct our attention to in the control room, if they could pop up the Mito computer. This is a viewer photo that was sent to Kelly Burns, and that, I'm told, is Charlotte Harbor. Kelly, is that correct? Yes. What was the viewer name? The viewer's name is, give me a second on that, but that's how much water they said is drained out. That is remarkable. Remember, we have a very strong offshore wind right now in Charlotte County, and it is sucking and pulling water out of the harbor. You can see for yourself how it's essentially just about dry right now in parts of Charlotte Harbor. And a few moments ago, we were looking live with the camera that we have at Shore Point Health in Punta Gorda. There's also parts of the Peace River right now that have dried out as water is being pulled up the river and out into the Gulf of Mexico. However, in other parts of our community, the winds have turned onshore, and right now that is the concern on Estero Island and Sanibel Island. I'm told my colleague Brenna White has video of Sanibel Island surge flooding. Brenna, what are you seeing in the alert center?
Yeah, Rob, in the NBC2 Alert Center, I'm tracking live feeds. It looks like this one is buffering right now. I was just watching it live. You can still pull it up, and I want to point out to you this spot right here on your screen is a mailbox. The water is all the way up to mailboxes from this spot on Sanibel Island. This is Lindgren Boulevard and East Gulf Drive, so it's about a block off of the beach. And again, water is up to the mailboxes in this live feed. I wish it wasn't buffering. I'm actually going to step off the screen right here and see if I can get it to refresh so that we can give you this view, because it's really just mind-boggling to see. You can see that mailbox that I'm pointing out here with the mouse, and the water is just rushing through this area. I'm going to see if I can get another camera on this website to work because, man, it's really scary to watch. I'm going to toss it back to Rob. I'll keep working on getting this live feed here, but Rob, take it away. We do know storm surge is happening. We're watching it live.
Okay, just one moment here. I believe Ellison just mentioned that a new tornado warning.
Right, we have a tornado warning for DeSoto County. So DeSoto County, this is in the far northeastern corner, more of a rural area here. But what I want to point out to you is that this is going to occur. I mentioned that as the storm gets closer and closer and continues to make landfall, we're going to continue to see these spin-up tornadoes. This one, the indication that I'm seeing on velocity scans here is not as impressive as some of the other tornado signatures that we've seen throughout the lifespan of Hurricane Ian impacting Southwest Florida. But with that said, we're still going to see powerful winds, possibly, up to 100 miles per hour or so. So even if you are farther inland, actually, I'm going to zoom out for just 1 second. Let me step off screen for a second. Even if you are farther inland and the eye wall is not coming your way just yet, we're still looking at these possible tornadoes starting to push on through, and that's why we want everyone to, that's why they sent out that alert and said, hey, this is no time to be traveling. This is time to stay where you are. So we did a little pixel query on there, just estimating these wind speeds. 80 could be higher than that because it's a little bit different levels in the atmosphere. 80 miles per hour possible in this region. This would be where the tornado is, just in southeastern part of, or excuse me, northeastern part of the county. Yeah, Rob, so you were tracking.
Yeah, actually, Allison, you're talking about those winds aloft. If we could switch over to the Doppler 2 source just for a moment, we are getting reports of wind gusts now away from any kind of tornado warning of 80 miles per hour at the Kalia Bay building. Now, something to remember, and we can come out here to camera 4 or put this in a squeeze box. The Kalia Bay site there that we have is up several floors in the, not in the atmosphere, but several floors high on that particular building. So the higher you are away from the ground, the faster the winds are going to move, of course. And it's very feasible when hurricanes make landfall that the category strength can actually go up a whole category when you go up like 30 floors. So even though here at the surface we're going to be experiencing category 4 force winds, in some of these high-rise condos that we have up and down our coast, the potential of category 5 force winds is a likelihood here given what we're seeing right now. And again, some of these other wind reports, if you can take that full screen so that it's easier to see at home, 81 miles per hour in Fort Myers at the Sanibel Harbor Yacht Club, a 68 mile per hour wind gust right now at Charlotte High School in Punta Gorda, and a 53 mile per hour wind gust here at Waterman Broadcasting. We're real close to where the Edison Mall is here in the city of Fort Myers. But look at the sustained winds right now, 55 miles an hour out of the east right now in Fort Myers. We've got a sustained south to southeast wind right now at 40 miles an hour in the city of Naples. So that's what the anemometers are saying. This is what the tower cameras are picking up. Let me jump over on this side. I will say, Rob,
though, we've been saying, hey, this is not a time to leave. If you've stayed in a high-rise condominium or apartment complex and you're here and you thought, well, hey, I'm not going to have flooding concerns because I'm higher in the building, now would be a time to go into the center of the building and make your way, not in the elevator, down the steps to some lower floors. Second, third, fourth floor is going to be a little bit safer than farther to the north or farther up. Excuse me, we're going to say words backwards a little bit throughout the day today.
Is this probably the strongest the winds will get for our viewers in Lee County?
Oh, no. They'll get even stronger for sure. Yeah, this storm is still getting a little bit closer, especially in Cape Coral. Cape Coral, that eye wall will come extremely close. You might, the thing is that the eye wall is so large. It's so large. So you're going to get some of those stronger winds. As this gets closer and closer, those winds will continue to pick up. So this is just the start of many hours of this continuing to be on the stronger side.
Just for a moment, perhaps, I'll take it over here with Doppler 2 at the chroma wall, and then I'll toss back over to my colleague, John Patrick at ABC 7. But as Peter just asked about viewers in Lee County, when the worst of it is likely to arrive, remember that, oops, I guess the camera's not set just yet. All right, thank you very much. Here's a look into the perspective now from the city of Cape Coral. I just showed you a few moments ago how we've had confirmed wind gust reports of 81 miles an hour hour at Southwest Florida International Airport, which is a healthy distance away right now from the actual eye wall, which is still sitting just offshore, if not starting to move onto areas of North Captiva and the western side of Sanibel. So the winds are up to 80 miles per hour plus outside of the actual eye of the hurricane. Hurricane force winds extend well beyond the center of circulation with Ian as it continues to move to the north-northeast at 10 miles an hour. But right now, the focus really has to turn to these barrier islands under a mandatory evacuation for a reason, because of the intense winds that are going to start moving over top of these communities imminently. Why don't we switch that up to the velocity product here? Try to find a good radar site here. So we're in a tough spot for the radar to see, but we'll just see what comes out here with these pixel query points. Yeah, it's a real tough part to see there. So I tell you what, I'm going to send things back over here as we put this back over to the regular reflectivity. For areas of the barrier islands, the worst is, pretty much here as it continues to lift in this north-northeast direction. But because the storm is moving so slowly, it's going to be a long couple of hours here for areas of western Charlotte and northwestern Lee County here, again, over the next few hours. I believe it's fair now to send things over to my colleague at ABC7, Chief Meteorologist John Patrick. John, what are you seeing from your perspective?
Well, I wanted to go ahead and track that outer rain band, that eye wall that you were just showing with the wind velocities. Again, we are looking at that outer eye wall right over the barrier islands, as Rob mentioned here, as we track it with our live radar. And you can also notice that there are thunderstorms. There's a lot of lightning around that eye wall, which is a sign of a very strong eye wall. Of course, the center of the storm right there, tracking to the northeast at about 9 miles per hour. So I want to go ahead and show you here the close view, Captiva Island, Cayo Costa right there, getting pounded by that wind and that very heavy rain right now as this spirals around the center of Ian. As we go off to the north and to the northwest a little bit here towards the Lee Island coast, there's Boca Grande. You're just now starting to see some of the outer eye wall wind on Boca Grande right now. That's headed for Gasparilla here. As we go over the next, I'd say 15 to 30 minutes, it should start getting into Gasparilla. Here's a track, that outer eye wall, the strongest of the winds. Here are the arrival times. We're looking at some of that heaviest of the activity here on the eastern side. Some of this is moving to the northeast as well into central Lee County. Now, this area is not as strong as this red area. This is where you're getting those 120, 130 mile an hour winds. Those are also moving off to the north and northeast as well. But you're seeing some of that action right now around the Fort Myers Villas area into Grandeza and the Cross Creek area of Fort Myers. Those are areas being impacted by some of the outer rain bands right now. As we go through time, you're going to look for that to work its way up to Paseo, North Fort Myers, as we get into 1218, Greens Edge condominiums, 1224 into Englewood. Our times just bumped up here as the clock progresses. You'll see these move up on the screen here. Englewood at 1230, and Englewood, Venice, you see over here. There's Englewood, there's Venice, and Northport's right there. You guys are going to see some of the strongest of the winds out of this system that will be on land. So that's going to happen for you right around 1230 as we get toward Pine Lakes and the Forum, 1230 to 1234, and out toward Gateway. Again, you're going to get kind of this area right in here at 1234. Now, these winds are not going to be as strong as the winds that are aimed at Northport and Englewood and Venice and Punta Gorda and those areas, but we are still going to see some hurricane force winds. I would not be surprised out of this line right in here to see 70, 80 mile an hour wind gusts. So prepare for that. And that's why we keep saying have your safe place, that interior room with walls that are close together, a small interior room, because not only do we have these winds, but we just showed you a tornado warning in DeSoto County. It's in far northeastern DeSoto County and heading into Hardy County, but we're going to start to see those as we go through the afternoon. There's that tornado warning right now. The storm itself is actually just about out of DeSoto County, but the warning is still active, and we're still in that right front quadrant of the hurricane. And as long as we're in that right front quadrant, we are going to see these spin-up tornadoes. So if you were to kind of draw crosshairs in through here, everywhere from about just to the west of Arcadia, from right in here in Sarasota County east, we're still prone for those tornadoes. Now, once you get down here toward Marco Island, the threat's a little bit less because now you guys are starting to get out of that right front quadrant. So the tornado threat around Marco Island and Everglades City is lower than it is right now around Arcadia and Clewiston and the like. And as we go through the next several hours, we're going to continue to track this heavy rain band through southwest Florida as the hurricane continues to make its way off to the northeast. So there's Sarasota, Punta Gorda, Englewood, Venice, Northport right in here. By the time we get into 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock, we're going to start to see more of that make its way toward the beach. This is our forecast model here with a landfall somewhere right around the Cape Hayes Peninsula, southern Sarasota County. Again, that eye wall right now pretty large, so it doesn't matter if it's going to be Venice or Englewood. That eye wall is going to go over all those communities. And then as it lifts off to the north and northeast on Thursday, notice how our winds are still coming on shore, still pounding our coastline, and that's why we have that very large threat of storm surge, and this is probably going to be the worst storm surge event that we've seen around here in a long, long time. Worse than Irma, worse than Wilma, worse than Charlie, worse than all that. And so that's why we've been so concerned about the storm surge event from this. We'll send it back over to Allison and Rob over at NBC2.
Thanks, JP. I want to show a video right now. We have video coming in from Cape Coral. This is the Chiquita Lock here, and we're seeing, this is a live picture, so we're getting this before any camera goes down or service goes down. We're already seeing that flooding coming on in. This is in southern tip of Cape Coral, southwest Cape Coral. We know that this is just the beginning of this storm having its impact in Cape Coral. We also have an official report down in Naples of a 4.8-foot storm surge, which is the highest ever recorded for them, and that will continue as well with those southerly winds. What I want to do for you is go back. I backtrack this live radar several hours and show you where the center is going and what's the trend. Okay, so we're back here at almost 7 o'clock in the morning, and the center of the storm was way farther to the south. But as we go forward in time, each hour, I put a little yellow dot here as it continues to push off to the north. What we're seeing is we did see a big jump earlier in this morning, and now we're kind of getting this real slow wobble to the north. So the time, 1 hour from this dot to this dot, the distance is getting a little bit smaller. That's concerning. I don't want this to stay offshore any longer than it has, than it's going to. The problem is that as we get closer and closer to land, we don't have any steering currents for this to push it into our land. So it's going to just kind of stay there until it's just forward momentum continues to push on in, and until the land interaction continues to stop.
4 decades ago, we started on a journey. We planted seeds.
Hour from here to here, that's where we saw the center of the storm. The hour before that, it was farther to the south and to the west. So we saw a big jump, and it stayed at, maybe about 10 miles per hour. But the last hour, it slowed down and wobbled just a little bit back off to the north and west. That's not a trend we want to see. It may not stay. It may not stay. It may continue to move off to the north and east. But the problem is that steering current to lift off to the north is kind of losing its pull on it. So we're going to have to see this continue for a little bit. You do notice here on First Alert Live Doppler, we're starting to see these green boxes go up. Flash flooding is going to be a likely issue for us later on today. So we do not need to be out on the roads at all, especially with the amount of water that we've already seen. Potholes are going to be filled with water. Your car is going to get damaged if you're out there anyway, and it's just simply dangerous to be on the waters right now. We are out on the roads. We don't have our crews out there. We are not out there just holding down, trying to get that video of someone outside. No, we are safe. We are inside. We are watching the storm push on in and watching how slow the storm is going to trek off to the north and east. So when does landfall actually occur? Well, we actually need that part of the eye wall, that front edge, to actually come on land, and we're not there yet. And Rob, we might not be there for another couple of hours before it really officially makes that landfall.
Yeah, the storm's only moving at 10 miles an hour. So if you think about how fast it is when you drive through like your community or neighborhood, that really isn't very, very fast. So unfortunately going to be a slow moving event here for us over the next several hours. If I could on the fly here, request that the control room take our Doppler 2 source. I just wanted to check in with downtown Fort Myers again. While we still have electricity, let's take advantage of these web cameras. As Allison mentioned, it's too dangerous for people to be outside right now, but the weather cameras, they don't mind taking the hit here once in a while when the weather goes downhill. This again is a live look from the beautiful downtown River District in Fort Myers. It's tough to see it to take a hit like this, but at least right now we are not seeing any substantial tree damage. All the trees are doing just fine right now. Looks like there's definitely some palm fronds getting tossed around there in the River District, but you know, right now I'm not seeing significant tree or limb damage, at least from this camera perspective. And as we pan here to the left, taking a look at how the harbor looks, it looks like, at least for the time being, the boats are fine. But remember, we are in the early stages of this event. We got a long ways to go before we are done. And for areas in Lee County, as Allison Ray mentioned to you just moments ago, the winds will continue to get stronger until we get our landfall and the storm eventually starts to pull away from us here in Southwest Florida. What I'm going to do now, and I'm just going to ask the control room to bear with me here, I'm going to ask that we top up weather camera over at the chroma wall, and I'm going to use this interactive hand tracker. Hearing from a few folks in our community who are riding out the storm in parts of Collier County that were under an evacuation yesterday. Are we set here at the wall?
Hey, Rob, I do want to say real fast
Sure.
that the National Hurricane Center is saying that, hey, this is making landfall currently in Sanibel and Captiva.
Ah, okay, that's very important, because again, once we get that landfall point, then we really have to focus on the catastrophic wind threat here as this moves towards Southwest Florida. While I have you, though, I did want to mention that we're hearing on Vanderbilt Beach in the Connors area, which is down here. Connors is a small street just to the west there of US 41. If we could make this a little bigger so I can see what I'm doing here at the wall, I'd appreciate it. So we're getting reports in this neighborhood here of water coming up and over the seawalls. What's happening is the water is getting pushed into these channels and these canals, and now it's moving up and over the seawalls here to the west of Vanderbilt Drive. Now, this is significant because in this part of Naples, the winds right now are moving in this direction because of where you are in proximity to the hurricane. Here, let me pull this up here in this direction. So right now, if this wants to work, our winds right now are moving up in this direction as they're headed toward the north. So this is something significant because we're already seeing that surge flooding in parts of coastal Collier County as the winds move in this direction. But as you move up here toward the north and northwest, as Allison said, we're now seeing evidence of a landfall here on the Lee County barrier islands. It is just here at the top of the 12 o'clock hour, and it looks like this is the main event now for the Lee County Islands, as the potential of these catastrophic winds I believe we have a live look at Sanibel Island, so let's take it there live if we could for a moment. That is looking live at Periwinkle Way, of course, on Sanibel Island, now experiencing the landfall of this Category 4 hurricane, a very high-end Category 4 hurricane. Maximum sustained winds right now at 155 miles per hour. Let me send things over back here in the studio over to Chief Meteorologist Allison Ray. She's at Weather Touch with Doppler 1 as our source.
Right, so they are officially making that call saying that we are making landfall. If we could go to Doppler 1 at the touch. I know we have video up, but I want to show you why they're calling that the landfall now. That landfall is occurring for Sanibel and Captiva because we have this outer band right here pushing through parts of North Captiva and also parts of Pine Island at this time. It is soon going to be headed to Boca Grande. So even though the center of the storm, the actual center of low pressure, is still offshore, because that outer band, or the main band of that eye wall, is just making landfall right now. We are calling that the eye wall is, that Ian is making landfall right now for Sanibel and Captiva. Where does it go from there? It goes into Charlotte Harbor. It goes into Cape Coral. It goes into Placida. Now, Cape Coral, you're not going to see these real strong winds that they're seeing farther to the north. You're still seeing very powerful winds. You're still seeing 80, 90 mile per hour wind gusts possible. But what you are going to see are these southerly winds just pushing more water into this region. And that's what we're going to have to monitor over the next few hours. Hopefully, anyone in Cape Coral that is in this area, far southwestern Cape, south of Veterans Parkway is well inland and off to the north and east as this water continues to build up, especially down through parts of Sanibel and Captiva.
Listen, if I may, control will be on camera 4 here. 2 minutes ago, the National Hurricane Center released this statement here saying that they've had reports of sustained winds of 71 miles per hour on Sanibel Island with a wind gust of 98 miles per hour. And at Redfish Pass, a sustained wind of 67 miles per hour with a wind gust of 84 miles per hour. And again, this aligns with the landfall that we're noticing now across the Sanibel Island and the western side of Lee County. If I could, why don't I send things over to my colleague at ABC7, Chief Meteorologist John Patrick. John, talk us through here as this hurricane makes landfall in Lee County. What are you seeing from your perspective?
I wanted to go a little bit farther south. You showed the camera out towards Sanibel on Periwinkle Way right now. This is a live look from Naples Grand Beach Resort. Of course, well removed from where that eye wall is coming on shore over Sanibel and Captiva right now. But you can see that the storm surge, I mean, look right here. I mean, these are all areas that have inundation from the Gulf of Mexico. The water has pushed onshore because of the hurricane, even though that center of the storm is a long ways away up towards Sanibel and Captiva right now. We're still seeing that storm surge, and I mean, you've got probably close to hurricane force winds here in parts of Collier County, especially along the coast. Look at that rain. It's just blowing sideways right there. So that's the view at Naples Grand Beach Resort. I also want to use live Doppler radar here and track where those winds are going in this outer rain band. And you see right there, this is what we're talking about with the landfall right there. The very inner edge of that eye wall is over Sanibel and Captiva right now in Cayo Costa and headed up towards Charlotte County, towards the mouth of Charlotte Harbor, and also up toward the Cape Hayes Peninsula. As I widen out here, I want you to notice that there's a lot more red over on this side than there is over on this side. There are very powerful hurricane force winds over here, but when we're talking about the 155-mile-an-hour winds, that's coming from the northwest and western side of that storm. It's a little bit lopsided as far as the eye wall winds right now, but you saw what's going on out in Sanibel right now. They're having hurricane force winds out there, and that's going to continue to track off to the northeast. So what I want to do here is just do this live and in real time here on our Doppler radar. We're going to track the heaviest of the wind here right on this outer eye wall, and we're going to move it off to the northeast at about 9 miles an hour, the forward speed of the hurricane right now. And I'm also going to drag this out in time, because initially that goes out just to 30 minutes by default, but we're going to go out to about 120. So we're going to go out 2 hours here. So as we get through time here, again, the heaviest of the wind is in this northern eye wall. So Bokeelia, 1212, that's 7 minutes from right now. You're going to start feeling, I mean, it's knocking on your doorstep right now. This is the heaviest of the wind there on that eastern side of that northern eye wall. Englewood, 136, so you have about an hour and a half, and 91 minutes to be exact from right now, as we track this continuing in that path off to the northeast at 9 miles an hour. Notice I've kind of cheated this northwest a little bit, because as Allison showed you on our live Doppler radar, tracking it hour by hour, that this has jogged just slightly to the left or to the northwest. And that's very typical for a hurricane. When we show you a path of a hurricane or a projection of a hurricane, it takes into account all the little wobbles. That path, that line that you'll see is just an average of the wobble. So it's very normal and very typical for a hurricane to wobble a little bit east and a little bit west as it tries to move on its path to the north-northeast. So that's why I've jogged this way just a little bit to allow for that little bit of a northwesterly jog. So again, Bokeelia, 1212. Englewood up here at 136 for the strongest of those hurricane force winds to be on top of you. Of course, we have a lot of the hurricane force winds on the eastern side of this as well. So we'll go ahead and track that portion of the hurricane outer bands and the outer eye wall for you. Also, we're going to continue monitoring this, kind of going off towards the northeast as well. A little bit. We'll jog it that way just a little bit. And again, 9 miles per hour movement. And we're looking at the 30-minute default. We'll put 2 hours on there. And now we're going to get some times on here like Fort Myers Beach at 12:21. So we're already starting to see some of that activity out towards Fort Myers Beach right now as far as getting very gusty, very windy, and already we're seeing the storm surge come on shore. That's going to continue, probably the worst of it at 12:21, so about 15 minutes, 14 minutes from right now. Kelly Greens at 12:39. Iona 12:42, into Cape Coral at 1:16. Now I know Cape Coral is very large. I want to show you where the marker is, and it's in the central Cape. So southwestern Cape, I would back that up to right around 1 o'clock or 10 till 1 as the strongest of the winds here in the southwestern Cape. Northeastern Cape, it's going to be a little bit longer than that, more towards 1:30, 1:45. Burnt Storm Arena at 1:18, and that's right here. So again, we're looking at that line of the strongest winds kind of on the eastern side of that outer eye wall to track off to the north and northeast, and headed, of course, up towards Charlotte County. This side of the eye wall already making landfall. That's going to continue to come on shore as we go through the afternoon. This area right in here that I just tracked for you is the strongest of the winds that will affect southwest Florida, the strongest of the winds of the hurricane, those 150, 155 mile-an-hour winds. Those are thankfully going to stay offshore. So let's go back over to NBC2 and Allison and Rob.
Right. Thank you, JP. I do want to show you a couple of things here with the wind speeds that you just touched on. Let's actually pull up our AWS computer, if we could, into the touch here. I want to show you an updated wind gust that we've seen out towards San about 99 miles per hour.
Holy cow.
And that is that highest wind gust. So when we see the estimates on radar, these are coming to fruition on the actual observing site. So that is an actual observation of 99 miles per hour. We do have a live shot of Sanibel. Let's take it. Let's see what the conditions look like out at Sanibel. So Periwinkle Way in Casa Iba West. So the water, you can start to see, if you look back off to the west there, if you could take it full screen, I just want to show people that off to the west, there's a building there. I'm not sure if it's a home, it looks like a business, a bit of a strip mall there. You can see the water levels starting to rise in that parking lot there, and the water will continue to move on in over Periwinkle Way. So you can see the winds, the camera itself is moving, and then also the signs are moving as well. Now let's go back to Doppler 1 in the touch, and the winds that JP did touch on, they're going to continue, especially here through Captiva and Sanibel. So we're seeing radar estimates of 130 miles per hour, and then we're getting those actual reports of 99. So not too far off here by any means. So we're in a little bit of a weird spot right here. Sometimes when it gets on the edge of it, what can happen is if that radar beam goes out, and then when it goes back, it catches the same droplet of water. It might give you kind of a messy reading because there's too much going on. So that's what we're seeing in that banding right there, but this will continue to move on in. So areas in Cape Coral and North Fort Myers, it's not unreasonable to have wind gusts 80, 85 miles per hour with sustained winds 60 to even up to 70. This is such a powerful storm, especially on the back edge of this pushing. And what we did mention was that earlier, 1 hour ago, it was moving at 10 miles per hour. That little bit of a wobble, now it's at 9 miles per hour. Not much of a difference, but it's noteworthy that it slowed down 1 mile per hour because we want this to keep on moving at this point to get out of here. So we are going to be tracking that water continue to rise. We've been looking at some of our cameras, and there are people outside, and I can't stress enough that this is so dangerous. You don't know what is in that water, what is flying around, what could cut you, what could hurt you. It is so dangerous to be outside. If you know anyone trying to enjoy this storm, this is a look at Naples Pier. Do we see anybody? There were people up there before. I think everyone finally took cover, thank goodness. This is a powerful storm. You don't want to mess with 100-mile-per-hour winds. You cannot withstand what could head your way. You might be able to take the wind itself, but something flying through the wind, hitting you in the head, that's going to be the dangerous part of these storms, and especially into the water as well. There could be things flying around there as well. What are we looking at? Rob has images from This is downtown Fort Myers.
Compelling here. I mean, we've had reports now of 99-mile-per-hour wind gusts in the city of Fort Myers. You were looking live at Doppler 2 is our source here. Just take it full as a live look from the River District in downtown Fort Myers. That would be at Doppler 2 is the source full. This is a live look again at the River District in downtown Fort Myers. In points south of this at the Sanibel Harbor area, we've now had confirmed wind gusts of 99 miles per hour in the past half an hour. And if you look live here from the top of the radar tower in the city of Fort Myers, you can see for yourself how bad the weather is right now as intense winds are pushing across the city of Fort Myers. Wind gusts in excess of 100 miles per hour are possible inside the next hour as this hurricane makes landfall here in the western side of Lee County on the Lee County Islands. One more look here at this confirmed wind gust report. That again was at the Sanibel Harbor Yacht Club. That was a 99-mile-per-hour wind gust. And right now they have sustained winds out of the southeast at 62 miles per hour there in that part of Fort Myers. We have sustained winds out of the east-northeast at 52 miles an hour in Punta Gorda. And we have sustained winds from the southeast at 40 miles an hour in the city of Naples. When it comes to radar, I'm going to ask if we could take this full, and I'm going to walk over to the chroma wall, so we'll need the interactive hand tracker tool. For the area on the leading edge of the eye wall that Chief Meteorologist John Patrick showed you just a few minutes ago. And again, we need Doppler 2 full screen at the wall here. This is again is the leading edge of the eye wall. We'll need, so it's easier to see these at home. I need this to be full screen, please. Thank you. This again is the leading edge of the eye wall. So the most intense winds with this Category 4 hurricane in excess of 140 miles an hour are moving in this direction here. So Placida by 1249, Rotunda West by 1257, Rotunda by 109, Manasota Key by 120, Englewood by 138, and El Jobin by 152. We're going to be as verbal as we can here over the next several hours because, as we mentioned, a lot of people are now without electricity, and we are simulcasting our coverage on the radios. Sunny 106.3 is the one that comes to mind, but there's a number of other radio stations within the Beasley Media Network that we are continuing. Oh, here it is. One moment. So the radio stations that we're currently simulcasting on include 98.9, 101.9, 104.7, 106.3, and 96.1. Thank you very much for that information, Kelly. If you're in the western side of Charlotte County or the northwest side of Lee County, you are going to lose electricity in the next few hours as the most intense part of this hurricane eye wall continues to lift to the north-northeast at 9 miles per hour. So I'll read off those arrival times again. 12:49 for Placida. The current time is 12:14. We're looking for arrival at 109 in Rotunda, 120 in Manasota Key, 138 in Englewood, and 152 in El Jobin. Let's see if we're in a good place where we can identify some of these wind velocities here. And I'm going to erase this storm track so it's a little clearer for you to see. And again, remember that perspective-wise here, we're looking at the beam height. So this is up and above the surface of the water. But right now, the radar is showing evidence of winds well in excess of 100 miles per hour. That there would be pegged at 105. This here would be pegged at 101. And this here will be pegged at, well, you know, you got to give it a little bit of a give and take here because we're talking about some pretty specific pixel query points. The point here, though, is that the most intense part of this hurricane is on this part of the eye wall here in this northern section. This is the worst part of the whole storm right here, and this is what is lifting to the north-northeast at 9 miles per hour. And again, moving to this northwest section of Lee County and areas of the western side of Charlotte County, as now we have a confirmed landfall of Hurricane Ian as a Category 4 hurricane on the western coast of Lee County in areas closer to Sanibel Island. If we can lapse the radar, you'll notice that this is moving along slowly. Forward speed again is only at 9 miles an hour, so we are just beginning the worst of this now as the hurricane makes this landfall and continues to very, very slowly crawl across communities in western Lee County and eventually portions of western Charlotte County. What this also means is that the most intense winds are probably going to be with our neighborhoods in areas of Lee County and western Charlotte County over the next 3 hours. So if you live in western Charlotte, if you live in western Lee, the time to be hunkered down in the safest part of your home is right now. That means in the most interior section of your home, away from windows, and ideally on the lowest floor of your home. You're talking about winds that are well stronger than what we can see during a tornado. So assume and act as if this was a tornado right over top of your house. That's where you need to be to stay safe if you're choosing to ride out this hurricane in your home, especially right now in the western side of Lee County and the western side of Charlotte County. Something else that's jumping out here too is the uptick in the lightning. Remember that tropical systems do not bring a lot of lightning because they are warm cored. They don't have the cold air aloft like we do with the sea breeze downpours and thunderstorms. So you oftentimes don't see very much in the way of lightning. But in the past 15 minutes, we have now had 59 cloud to water lightning strikes. When you see an uptick or a burst in the lightning count, especially around an eye wall, it's an indication of a very strong feature in the atmosphere. And when you've seen excess winds confirmed at more than 100 miles an hour, this is just what we have to be prepared for here as we ride out the landfall of this hurricane, again in the western side of Lee County and eventually pushing toward the western side of Charlotte County. We'll zoom in here on the map. If you still have electricity at your homes to see some of these neighborhoods, this would include the Cape Hayes Peninsula, areas especially along to the west of Port Charlotte. That's where the worst of the winds will arrive initially. And then as long as it continues on that north to northeast movement, it will move fairly similar up to along US 17, which means areas like Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, Lake Susie, Fort Ogden, Arcadia, all in line for the potential of some serious wind damage as the eye of this hurricane makes landfall in the western side of Lee County over Sanibel Island and then continues to drift here toward the northeast. If I could, is ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist John Patrick available? All right, I'm going to pass things over just for a moment to John. John, what are you seeing from your angle?
All right, thanks, Rob. I wanted to go ahead and show you here the Naples Grand Camera. We showed this a few moments ago, and since we showed it, we've seen this water pile up even more. I know we're talking about Sanibel, we're talking about Captiva, 99-mile-an-hour wind gust out on Sanibel Island, clocked just a few minutes ago. But I want to show you that this storm surge event is not going to be confined to Charlotte and Lee County. This is happening right now in Collier County. And I want to go ahead on this camera while I've got it up here and see if I can zoom out even more so we can get kind of a wide view of the storm surge as it is happening here. And the problem with coming out this wide is sometimes you get rain on the camera and it's tough to see. But I want to show you this because you can see the flooding here going on all this area here around the Naples Grand Beach Resort. Plus, on top of this, you can see that it's raining very heavily here right now. So this has been our big concern, and now it's happening. You can see, I want to show this particular street here because you can see water's coming up here a few feet on this street here, and even some of these two-story houses that you can see here. Look how far up the water is on this house and on this house. That whole entire street is experiencing flooding right now in a major way. And that's going to continue. This is not going to let up. That storm surge is going to get even higher as we go through time. As long as we can keep those winds on shore, this is going to continue wrapping around Hurricane Ian. Let me get out of that screen, and we'll go back to our live radar here. Want to clear that off because we want to go ahead and continue tracking in real time here this outer eye wall. And you heard Rob talk about the uptick in lightning. Right now, we're down a few, down to 55 from 59 when Rob talked to you a couple of minutes ago. But this eye wall, and you also notice that the red has built back a little bit over St. James City and Flamingo Bay here and on Captiva Island. So now that eye wall, those heavier thunderstorms and that gustier hurricane wind, that's built back a little bit here toward the eastern side of that eye wall. The western side here on this lopsided storm is still the strongest, but you can see that with that lightning and those storms and that convection, that indicates very rapidly rising motion within this eye wall, and that's creating those thunderstorms and that cold air that is looming there and producing those lightning strikes here. Let's go ahead and show you here in a close view of our map here. There's Flamingo Bay. That area is, you saw 99-mile-an-hour wind gusts on Captiva Island, Flamingo Bay, probably getting the same right now. There's Captiva, Sanibel. As you approach Lighthouse Beach and Fort Myers Beach, the wind may lighten up just a little bit down through here, but it's still going to be hurricane force. Keep in mind, hurricane is 75 when you round the weather, or the Hurricane Center will usually round to either a 5 or a 0. So for all intents and purposes, it's 75 and above those hurricane force winds, and we're still seeing that here. Even though we're not in the red. This is going to be your 90, 100 plus mile-an-hour winds up here in that red area. So let's go ahead and track this as it continues to move onshore. Now that it's strengthened just a little bit, it's continuing to move off to the northeast right now at about 9 miles an hour. So we'll go ahead and move it something like that. We're going to get Matt Lachey in here at 12:43. So our time right now is 12:21. I'll extend this out to 120 minutes, so that would be the next 2 hours. And again, we're tracking just this portion of the eye wall. That gets into Matt Lachey, as I mentioned here, at 12:43. Englewood at 121, so that's about an hour from right now. South Venice at 149. Burnstorm Arena at 152. Venice at 206, and Northport at 217. So let me go ahead and repeat that one more time if you're listening on our radio partners across the FM dial here. Matt Lachey, 12:43, Englewood 121, South Venice 149, Burnstorm Arena 152, Venice at 206, Northport at 217. So that's the nastiest of the wind, those areas I just mentioned as this eye wall comes onshore. But we're still going to see hurricane force winds, again, pounding Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach and all the way down to Bonita Beach, and the wind direction is coming right on shore. So as I showed you, even though the storm and the worst winds up here at Sanibel, Captiva, and the Cape Hayes Peninsula, Lee and Charlotte County, you're still seeing that storm surge all the way through Naples. We're probably seeing some on Marco Island and all the way through southern Collier County because of the direction of that wind and that push of water from the Gulf of Mexico onshore. And this, unfortunately, is going to continue until we can get that storm far away from us here in Southwest Florida. Going to send it back over to NBC2, Allison and Rob over there.
Thanks, JP. And exactly what you were saying, we're seeing that storm surge into parts of North Naples. You're getting those onshore winds, and we're getting videos. So a couple of things to show you here. This one, North Naples, this is near Vanderbilt Beach. And keep in mind, if we could take this full, just so I can give you the perspective of how deep this water is and how it's still going to get even higher. We're not done with the onshore winds for Naples just yet. So this is Vanderbilt Beach Road. We're seeing that heavy rain starting to increase near the cars and near some of the homes. Then also, and this is going to be something, and I said this is why you don't want to be out in the water. I don't know if that is a dolphin, but to me it looks like a shark. I am no marine biologist, but that does not look like something you want to be nearby. So we're going to have that as well. This is Devonwood. This is pretty far inland. So this is what we're going to be dealing with. The wildlife is following the water. There will be fish. There will be apparently sharks, and we have a lot of moving water here. What I also want to show you, and this is why I said don't go to the beach. Let's go to our Naples Pier. We are not far from that pier being underwater. Okay, so think about that. That wood will be easily damaged or taken away if that water continues to rise just another couple of feet. The cement pilings will be there, but that wood will easily be knocked around, and you can even see it on the far distance. You can barely see the edge of that pier. And now we're seeing the waves crash over. So the water's not done rising yet. We still have a couple more hours to go. This is going to be substantial because we just saw people out there a while ago. I'm sure some official probably brought them back on land because it was getting so dangerous out there. But we can't see the edge of the pier. The water will continue to rise. Keep sending us our videos, but don't go outside. We don't need you to be out into those elements. Just stay safely in your home. Rob, what are you tracking on First Alert Live Doppler? This hasn't moved too much just yet. We're still seeing it kind of wobble just off the coastlines. I wish it was moving a little bit faster, but unfortunately it's not. Actually, let's go to our AWS computer. Keith, if I can just, I'm going to step off and see what Keith is, our producer, getting some more video. And where is this from? Periwinkle. Okay, so let's go to our AWS computer. This is Periwinkle. This is Sanibel. Remember, we were saying that water is going to rise. Now it's rapidly rising, and it's moving fast. So that's the fear that we were expecting. This is why those evacuations were ordered for parts of Sanibel and Captiva, because it is not going to be easy to get off the island for a while now until those waters recede. If we could go back to the MEDO computer with that Naples pier, the water's getting even higher. Just within the past 2 minutes, the waves are becoming more intense. And again, storm surge is not a tidal wave. These are just waves from the ocean pushing on in as the water continues to get higher and higher and push in. And I think those are some mangroves in its way. The water may easily come up over those mangroves and push into places like Fifth Avenue into Naples. And downtown Fort Myers, Rob, are we seeing rain flooding there?
Juggling a few things right at the moment here, Allison. If we could take a Doppler 2 full, and let's take it full so that you can see things a little easier here. It looks like we still have electricity right now in the downtown River District, but it does look like we've lost at least one of those royal palms that's up near where the Luminary Hotel is at. I'm also in contact with my neighbors. My neighbor in Estero, Ray, just sent this video from his balcony. He says that power is now out in this part of Estero along Corkscrew Road. As you can see how fast the winds are pushing around there in that part of Lee County, which is well away from where the actual eye is, which has been, of course, making landfall in areas of Sanibel Island inside the past half an hour. We're also keeping tabs. As long as we have electricity, we're going to keep showing these cameras as much as we can so that you have an eyes on the ground here. This, again, is a live look from Punta Gorda, and think about how this has evolved in the past half an hour. Toward the top of the hour, we were able to see dry ground in that part of the Peace River, and now the winds have picked up so much the water is pushing back to the west. Now, this is still an offshore wind in this part of Charlotte County, so this means it's an offshore wind pushing water out of the Peace River and out of Charlotte Harbor. That's significant because that's the opposite direction for a storm surge event in areas of like where mainland Charlotte County is at, all right? So that video, or rather that live camera that you saw just a moment ago, I'm going to zoom in here real close so you can see it, is here off of Marion Avenue. So right now the water in the Peace River is moving in this general direction because it's moving around the eye of Hurricane Ian, which right now is located right here. All right, so for the time being, we still have this offshore wind in Charlotte County that's encouraging the water to get pulled offshore and toward the Gulf of Mexico. Eventually, though, as the eye of the hurricane continues to move to the north-northeast, it looks like the center of it is eventually going to go right over top of Charlotte Harbor, as again it moves to the north-northeast only at 9 miles an hour. So the main concern in the next half an hour is what's happening right here in the brunt of this eye wall. And to make this a little easier to see, I'm going to ask that we send the control room over to the weather wall, so we'll need the weather camera adjusted. Just give me a moment to do this here on the fly while they get the camera set up. Looks like that's on the way there. All right, so here's again the perspective of what we have with live Doppler radar. I just want to make sure that if you are riding out this hurricane in the western side of Charlotte County, it's about to go downhill big time in the next hour. The storm is not moving very fast. Again, it's only moving to the north-northeast at 9 miles an hour. So communities that are about to get hit by the eye wall here inside the next 30 minutes would include these communities that are up, of course, against the immediate coastline. Manasota Key, Rotunda, Cape Hayes and Placida, and then it's basically moving over top of the Gasparilla area. And as you'll notice for yourself here, Boca Grande and Port Boca Grande are in the middle of the eye wall here at. All right, so I'm understanding from our producer that we have a live perspective from Englewood Beach. And Englewood, as you know, is up here off of Lemon Bay. Let's just take the camera full, and we don't need to see that radar image on the side. Just take the camera full if we could. So that is from our partners at EarthCam. You're looking from the Englewood area toward the Gulf of Mexico. And remember that the winds are still offshore in this part of Englewood. So there's more beach now than there is on just a regular day, because look at how the winds are blowing those trees around. The air is moving from land and toward water, so it's pushing the water away from Englewood Bay. Eventually, as the winds wrap around the hurricane, though, the risk of storm surge is going to increase in parts of Lee County and areas of Charlotte County. Now, if we could come back out here to the weather wall, I wanted to touch base on the storm surge issue, because as my colleague Kelly Burns has been in communication with some friends of hers in the Naples area, we continue to see saltwater flooding right now in parts of the Naples Park area off of, Connors. Now, this is because the winds, are pushing pushing this salt water into neighborhoods like this. So as the salt water gets pushed into these canals, and this is the neighborhood here to the east of Gulf Shore Drive and to the west of Vanderbilt, where we've seen this water move up and over the seawalls and is causing flooding here in these communities in the North Naples area. But remember, this is not going to be the area that has the worst storm surge, because for the time being, the winds over this part of Naples are actually moving in this direction, so they're almost going parallel to shore. The worst storm surge is not going to be in areas where you see a wind that is parallel to shore. The worst storm surge is going to be in areas where that wind collides with the land, and that's going to happen more here across Estero Bay. You can see how the way the shoreline is shaped here in this part of Lee County. As those onshore winds continue to push the water in that direction, it will help to fill up Estero Bay, and that is why the risk of significant and historic storm surge is possible in areas like Fort Myers Beach over the next few hours. As these winds align here, as the National Hurricane Center has been trying to convey, the possibility of more than 12 feet of saltwater flooding is possible on Estero Island should these winds align and stay onshore long enough to push that much salt water here up and over the seawalls and onto what is normally dry ground. The area that we have to be most concerned about right now, and the area where there is going to be devastating wind damage in areas of Lee County and western Charlotte County. And that is because, again, our eye wall is now moving onshore across the western side of Lee County. I know there's a lot of folks who are watching in Cape Coral, so why don't we zoom in here a bit closer to Cape Coral. Folks, if you're in the Cape, right now let's use J.C. Park here as a reference point, and I'll pull out this measurement tool. J.C. Park here just to the north of the Cape Coral Bridge in the southeast corner of the city. Right now, if you're in Cape Coral, you're about 6.5 miles away from the brunt of this eye wall that is moving to the north-northeast. So again, there could be substantial wind damage as this eye wall of the hurricane continues to move across areas of eventually western and northwestern Cape Coral, across Pine Island, up and down Pine Island. Right now, the weather is simply awful. And then eventually here in the next few minutes, communities closer to Matlacha. I believe I'm going to send things now over to my colleague, Chief Meteorologist Allison Ray. Allison, what are you seeing from your perspective?
So what I'm really trying to concentrate on right now is how is this eye behaving over the past hour or two? How is it going to move onshore? Honestly, the past half hour, it's become a little bit more elongated, but it's not moving very fast. We are seeing the outer bands starting to push on shore. That official landfall is there for Sanibel and Captiva, but we're not seeing any great movement over the past half hour of the actual center of the storm pushing on shore. So unfortunately, until we see great movement in this eye, these southerly winds are going to continue. That water level that we see in Sanibel and Captiva is going to increase, and it will substantially increase, maybe even over another foot or so, and roads will be completely impassable if they already are not already. Another area that will continue to see the waters rise is going to be Pine Island. The Matlacha Bridge will be, I wish we had a camera there to see how that was developing as well. Oh, let's go back to the Chiquita Lock. Let's look at what that is looking at. So the water has already come up. I would say from the last time we looked at this, I bet it was about an hour ago. That looks like it's up another 6 to 8 inches from what we saw last time. You can see the weather vane there blowing in the wind. That will continue to increase as well. Let's go back to First Alert Live Doppler here. And what is interesting that we've been pointing out is the lightning. It's not starting to weaken just yet. We're still seeing those powerful winds. This is a half-hour loop of this eye of the storm, and it's just not, it looks like it's starting to get closer to it, and then it just kind of stalls out a bit. This was the worst fear, that if over the next few hours we continue to see this stall out, the winds will continue from Naples. I'm actually getting some video in right now into places near Pine Ridge with water near 41 spilling into those regions as well. So nowhere is really going to be safe from that water rising. Even areas inland, we have those flood advisories as well for areas even into Immokalee and Ave Maria. As more rain comes in, the water pushes in. Just the entire water table of where Florida is going to be so saturated. So the water, as these networks kind of work together, it was just slowly rise across all of, especially our coastal communities. Even if the onshore winds aren't even in your region, just the water tables will continue to push up farther to the north. What we're also seeing is up through Rotunda and the Cape Hayes Peninsula, you are just minutes away from the winds getting very strong. If you're in the Cape Hayes Peninsula, if you're in Rotunda, Placida, Rotunda West, even up through Port Charlotte, you need to be making sure you know where you want to be in your home, where's the safest spot in your home. These strong winds are going to be moving into your region. Later on this evening, as this band of thunderstorms on the far northwest side starts to push on in, say north of Venice in this trajectory off to the northeast, that's where that heavy rain will come from. The problem with this hurricane, amongst many of things, is that the west side has just as many threats as the east side, and we're getting all of it. So it will continue to push on in up through parts of the Tampa region. That rainfall total, that rain band will continue to push on in. They will see substantial rain flooding on top of the other flooding as well. I'm sorry, what did you say? Where do we? Live look at Sanibel. Okay, let's take a look at that. Live look at Sanibel, the flooding there. Yeah, it's just getting higher and higher. I think we saw this a little bit ago, and I could see the bottom of those windows back off to the north and the far northwest part of the screen. I could see more of those doors, and now they're starting to increase. I mean, just this water's just rushing on in, and it's just still spinning out there. I think, do we have JP over onto the ABC side tracking? Okay, I'm going to toss it over to Chief Meteorologist John Patrick at ABC7. What are you tracking now?
Well, we pulled up the Punta Gorda camera here from Short Point Health, I should say, and we noticed some really blinding rain and some really gusty wind conditions blowing here over the past 5 to 10 minutes. And we can actually see across the Peace River now. That was not the case a few moments ago. So that eye wall, which is over Sanibel and Captiva, it's moving off to the northeast. So we can see, well, the camera just froze there. We have been seeing off and on these gusts that are blowing the water right down the Peace River. And we're going to continue to see that. Right now, the water's being blown in this, oh, here it goes, it picked back up again. With these wind gusts, every now and again, we'll lose the internet connection to our camera, and it'll freeze up like that. But you can see the water being pushed in this direction. So that would be towards the Gulf of Mexico, because the wind right now coming around the northern side of Hurricane Ian is out of generally the east, technically the east-northeast. And as that passes by the center of the storm, this is going to be the opposite direction. It's going to come back up the river, and that's what we're going to see causing all the storm surge that we have been talking about now for several days. Let's go here to our WeatherBug computer, AWS computer, and I wanted to show you here that right now and in real time at Charlotte High School, unfortunately the weather station at Short Point Health, the wind must have knocked that out already because we weren't getting any data from there, but the camera's still working, so that's at least something. But you see that easterly wind right now, and that's in real time. That's 46 miles per hour there at Charlotte High School. We've already seen a gust at 80 miles per hour. So that easterly wind is pushing that water out toward the Gulf of Mexico right now. Oh, look at that, just bumped up to 64. After the center of that storm passes by, we're going to see this jump around to the west. It's going to come from the complete opposite direction, and that's going to take all that water that's been drained or continues to be drained out of the Peace River. It's going to push it all the way back up, and then it's going to drag in some water from the Gulf of Mexico on top of that. So that's the storm surge that has not started yet in Charlotte County along the Peace River, but after that storm center passes by, it is going to start. We're already seeing some storm surge in parts of Naples, around the Naples Grand, because the center is already by those areas and that wind is already onshore. I want to go ahead to, let's do Lynx 1 over here, and we'll show you here. This is the Naples Grand Beach Resort. I've been monitoring this camera because this is fascinating and not in a good way. this is what I'm talking about. The winds are already coming onshore across Collier County and parts of southern Lee County. So this is what we're seeing right now in real time. It's still windy, but the main thing now here in Collier County is going to be the water coming onshore. And you can see the houses here right near the Naples Grand Beach Resort are flooding right now because of that storm surge. Want to go ahead to our radar here. We're going to stay on this same computer. I'm going to go into our analysis mode here. And the lightning strikes have gone down. Earlier when I spoke to you, and I paid attention because Rob had mentioned it, we had 59 lightning strikes, and now we're down to 28 within the last 15 minutes. But all of those lightning strikes are here kind of on that northeastern side of the eye wall. So this is still a very active and developing area of the eye wall. We have noticed about an hour ago, the red cut off right about here. But with all that lightning that has popped over the last hour or so, we're starting to see it back build here now, down through Pine Island. The lightning is about to Flamingo Bay right there, not quite down to St. James City. But we've noticed this red area. These are the gustiest of winds, at least on this side of the storm. We've noticed that build and get a little bit stronger. So we're getting images of the 99-mile-an-hour wind gust that we had there at Sanibel Harbor on the Fort Myers side of the causeway. And we're continuing to see that. And as we track this over the next couple of hours, that's going to continue through the afternoon. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do a couple of tracks here because this eastern side of the eye wall here is kind of split up a little bit. So what I want to do is track this at 9 miles an hour off to the north-northeast, that initial little line. And it gets into Englewood here at 1:04 this afternoon. We're going to go out 120 minutes there. That'll give us 2 hours worth of times here. So as we go out again, I'm tracking just this little area right here of the eye wall. We'll get to this one in a moment. Englewood at 1:03. South Venice at 1:35. Port Charlotte at 1:57. Venice at 1:59. And Northport at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So it's 12:42 right now. Got about 20 minutes in Englewood until this initial portion of the eye wall gets to you. 1:35 there in South Venice, and then Port Charlotte at 1:57. Downtown Venice at 1:59, Northport at 2 o'clock. And now I'm going to do a track for this other portion of the eye wall because this is going to contain some of the heaviest of the winds. So it's going to kind of be a 1-2 punch. You'll get this initial eye wall, you'll get a little bit of a break, and then the second portion, let me start that again. The second portion of this is going to come through with some even gustier winds. So we'll take this and drag it off at 9 miles an hour. Off to the north. Technically, we've noticed a little jog to the north-northwest, but we'll split the difference between the advisory to the north-northeast and what we've been noticing on radar off to the north-northwest. We'll go ahead and drag this out again, 120 minutes. So then, after that first initial line, Englewood 1:40, South Venice at 2:30 this afternoon. So as I mentioned, it's going to be a 1-2 punch with this portion of the eye wall, unless something changes and this fills in over the next several minutes. That's what we're looking at right now. We're also tracking this area moving off to the north-northeast as well. That's going to affect portions of Lee County. So let's go ahead and do a track for that little area on our live radar. And we'll go ahead and track from the south side of Pine Islands. We'll do it something like that, and then we'll go 9 miles an hour. And that's going to put it into Pineland here at 12:48. Into Port Boca Grande at 12:50 and Bokeelia at 1:08. So those are the areas where this portion of the eye wall, as you get towards more towards the center where the eye is, that's going to be the heaviest of the wind right in here, moving off to the northeast. So those are the areas, again, Pineland 12:48, Port Boca Grande at 12:50, and Bokeelia at 1:08. And while I have you here for a moment, I want to talk about our radio partners here that we are simulcasting on right now. So if something happens and the power loses, goes out in your area, you have an option to get our NBC2 and our ABC7 News apps. We have live streams on there with video. But then if you want to conserve your cell phone battery, you want to go to the radio, and those are 98.9 WGUF, Gator Country 101.9, 104.7 The Mix. We're also on Sunny 106.3 and 96 K-Rock, which is at 96.1. All those FM frequencies are carrying our signal right now, and I know B103.9 is as well, so that's another one on the list there. So those are the FM radio stations you can listen to our coverage here from ABC 7 and NBC 2.
Okay, thank you, JP. We're going to continue to monitor these rain bands moving on in. I also want to go to right now. So we're live in the camera here. We're kind of giving you a perspective behind the scenes of what we're doing here in the studio. We have 2 studios keeping you up to date of how this storm is pushing on in. Let's go to a live look out at Sanibel. Conditions continue to see the waters rise in parts of Sanibel. Now, all right, here it is. So this is a live picture of the waters continuing to rise. What's going to happen in Sanibel momentarily? The rain is starting to let up. That's rainfall. Actually, the eye of the storm will begin to move into Sanibel momentarily within just a few minutes. But that does not mean the waters won't continue to rise. Those southerly winds on the east side of that eye of the storm are going to continue to push more and more water into our region. We're also getting some video in from Cape Coral. We're going to have that too coming up a little bit later, that of substantial water beginning to increase. I know in my neighborhood up in North Fort Myers, and a couple images of some trees down as well. So this is becoming a very, if it was not dangerous last night, this is beyond getting very life-threatening with the amount of water that we're seeing increase across the region. Let's go to First Alert Live Doppler here. Like I mentioned, Captiva and Sanibel, the light rain is starting to move on in, but the threats are far from over. The threats will continue into the evening until we are done with these onshore winds. Might take a little bit of a break here or there if the winds let up, especially through the eye, but it's going to continue. One thing I want to point out to you, though, and JP was pointing at this band of rain, this heavy rain, this is about 12 miles wide. Remember, the storm is moving less than that. It's moving at about 9 miles per hour. So you're going to be dealing with the heavy rain, the heaviest rain that we have. Also, the lightning and the strongest winds for well over an hour for parts of Bokeelia, Pineland, Pirate Harbor. It's moving into your region momentarily. Charlotte Harbor, here comes the rain. I know Charlotte Harbor, though the water from the harbor started to move out, this is going to be moving back in once this eye passes. That water will come back in a hurry. So Burnt Storm Marina, we have you at 107. Pirate Harbor, I'm going to step over on this side of the screen at 121, pushing on in. I am going to zoom farther south because we are focusing on where the highest winds are right now. That doesn't mean that's the only threat on the map, on the table here. Rotunda 1250, you're going to have the winds continue to pick up. You're just starting to see, I have this on a time lapse for the past hour. Rotunda, you're going to start to see the heaviest bands of rain and the strongest winds. You're on the eye of the storm here, pushing on in. Port Charlotte, 218. It's going to take that long to go up into Port Charlotte. 218. That's how slow this storm is moving, from 10 to 9 miles per hour. What's going to be good to see here, another piece of information that we can gather coming up in just about 12 minutes. The National Hurricane Center will give us another update and tell us how fast the storm is moving. I put a time track on it for you. I put the eye of the storm, and it is moving from this past hour. It's moving at about 9 miles per hour. But it's such a large storm, it's such a large eye. Remember when we were saying, hey, the only thing similar to this storm with Charlie is the path. You can fit Charlie in this eye twice before we run out of room. So that's how big and powerful this storm is. And that's why we're seeing those impacts, not only where it's making landfall, but well to the south as well. We're getting a lot of reports into Fort Myers, even near 41, parts of Naples, North Naples, Marco Island. Naples Pier is basically underwater. We've lost the camera feed to the Naples Pier because of how strong those winds are. That water will continue to increase. The flood advisories continue, and this water will work its way inland. As the water continues to rise, it has nowhere else to go but to continue to push inland. So areas west of 41 need to start thinking of a plan. There's no escaping the water at this point, so think about going up. If you start to see the water become too much to handle, you want to go upwards in your house, even if that means that you might have to do a little climbing. We're going to be running into issues within the next few hours. The problem I'm concerned about, and Rob Duns has a look at some of these water levels coming up. What I'm concerned about, Rob, is that we're not even at landfall, where we're a few hours from the back edge of this eye of the storm making its way on Sanibel and Captiva. So it's going to be another few hours of these levels just moving up even higher and higher.
If I may, think of in proximity to where the eye of this, think of yourself in proximity to where the eye of the hurricane is. If you're in Charlotte County, the winds are still blowing offshore, but if you're in Naples, the storm surge event is starting right now. And if I could ask the control room to take the Doppler 2 graphic source, this here is a look at the gauge that we have available to us from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration that shows the water levels at Naples Bay. And as you'll notice, we already have a storm surge event right now where the water levels are up to 5 feet. That is major flooding status here for this part of Naples Bay. The blue line shows you where the predicted or typical water levels would be for this period of time. Notice how we're approaching a high tide cycle here in this part of Naples that is making the storm surge worse, and we have measured water levels right now that are exceeding 5 feet here at the Naples Bay. So the storm surge event is beginning in Collier County. We already have confirmation of saltwater flooding in parts of Collier County. We're also getting some pretty compelling images from Fort Myers Beach, where storm surge saltwater flooding has now moved across Estero Boulevard on that side of Estero Island. I want to show you some wind gust reports here. Wind is a big concern over the next hour in Charlotte County and Lee County, because that's where the brunt of these substantial hurricane force winds are going to go through. But where we have observation sites, we've already gotten confirmed winds of 69 miles per hour at Naples, 79 miles per hour in Punta Gorda, and the eye has yet to arrive in Punta Gorda. 66 miles per hour in the city of Cape Coral. That was measured at the fire station. And then as you notice here for these other wind reports, we had a 66 mile per hour gust in Grove City in Charlotte County and an 84 mile per hour gust in Ding Darling. That's, of course, the wildlife area on Sanibel Island. In addition to this, our network here at NBC2 and ABC7 has also observed wind gusts of 99 miles an hour at the Sanibel Harbor Yacht Club, and we've had wind gusts in excess of 80 miles an hour measured at the International Airport in Lee County to the east of Interstate 75. This is the first video that I'm seeing sent to our studios here of damage. This would be of a boat in the city of Cape Coral. This was sent to us from NBC2 and ABC7 viewer Kevin Brand. Kevin didn't say exactly where he was in the city of Cape Coral, but obviously up against one of the city's beautiful canals that it is known for. And again, we're starting to see some damage to some of these boats. And it's so understandable considering what's going on. The eye of this Category 4 hurricane is just west of the city of Cape Coral right now and is producing damaging wind gusts that we're going to be moving across the western side of Lee and the western side of Charlotte County. This is also some awfully scary video. This here sent to NBC2 and ABC7 viewer Joe. Joe didn't say specifically where he was. All I know is the zip code, and the zip code comes in for what's considered northwest Cape Coral and the Matlacha area. So as evidence here based on where he is, he's obviously very close to the water. You can see for yourself how that's blowing around the trees. You can see for yourself the very chopped up waters here. Could the producer repeat that, please? Let's take one more live look here at Englewood Beach. And again, that's significant because as I mentioned to you in Charlotte County, your winds are still offshore in areas like Englewood Beach. So in what you're seeing there, the waters are pushing offshore, moving away from the beach. But that will change here as the eye of the hurricane continues to move to the north-northeast at 9 miles an hour. Now, I showed you just a moment ago that very compelling video from the Matlacha and northwest Cape Coral area. If I could ask the control room to switch up sources, we're going to want to go back to Doppler 2. We're going to go to the weather wall, and I'm going to use the interactive hand tracker. So give me a moment to switch up the weather clickers here. That video I showed you just a moment ago, again, it came in from the zip code here in Northwest Cape and over toward the Matlacha area. And that was before this moved in. This is the brunt of the eye wall now, moving across the northern end of Pine Island, across Matlacha, and now stretching across the northwest, extreme northwest corner of the city of Cape Coral. So if you're in these areas across western Lee and eventually here, the southern and western portions of Charlotte County, the brunt of the eye wall continues to crawl in your direction to the north-northeast at 9 9 miles per hour. So if we could just do some storm tracking here in just a few select communities, we'll pull out this storm track tool. We'll put this on the leading edge of the brunt of the eye wall. Again, movement, as you know, is at 9 miles an hour to the north-northeast. So we'll pull this out at 9 miles an hour. Tilted off there to the north at 9 miles an hour. So the radar would peg just in this small scale boundary here, Rotunda by 105, the brunt of these potentially, catastrophic wind damage, winds capable of producing catastrophic wind damage is what I'm trying to say here, moving toward the western side of the Cape Pace Peninsula inside the next 15 minutes. It is 12:55 right now. Radar would peg the arrival of the eye wall in the Rotunda area by 105. And this, of course, is in western Charlotte County. This is an area that was under a mandatory evacuation, and you can see for yourself why when you consider what's happening here across western Lee County and areas of western Charlotte County. Give me a moment here and we'll switch up the product. We'll see if the radar is in a better place to give us an idea of the wind speeds right now. A moment ago, we showed you that live perspective off the coast of Englewood. Englewood right here. As you know, again, the winds are going offshore in this part of Charlotte County, so we've got a wind direction moving like that. And the winds are whipping up here, especially over top of the Gulf. If we were to pixel some of these points, like what's out here, that's showing winds in excess of 115 miles per hour. Now, remember that that's at the beam height, so curvature of the Earth, radar beams are shot out at an angle. At the point in the sky where the radar beam hits that point in the atmosphere, it's indicating the winds are moving at, again, 119 miles per hour. So when you translate that down to the surface, that means we're seeing winds in excess of 100 miles per hour here based off of the radar returns. That motion means that all that substantial wind on that part of the eye wall will likely move into areas of Sarasota County. So if you're watching or part of the viewing area in the Northport area, the potential of some extreme wind damage is in the forecast here in the next 60 minutes as the eye wall continues to lift to the north-northeast at 9 miles an hour as we monitor the continual landfall of this slow-moving hurricane. You'll notice again the way things look. We've got one piece of the eye over the western side of Lee County. We've got one side of the eye over top of the Gulf, and then a gigantic hole in the middle. And that is quite something. You know, in the winds of a hurricane, the center of the eye it's sometimes very, very still. I don't believe we have enough of a satellite picture to show you that it's completely cleared out, but the expanse of that eye goes out 30 miles. That's about where it was yesterday when it was going through these eye wall replacement cycles. So this is obviously a formidable hurricane. It has a very wide eye. Will bring some serious wind damage to parts of northwest Lee County and eventually western Charlotte County as, again, it continues to lift to the north-northeast at just 9 miles per hour. I'm going to send things over to my colleague, ABC7 Chief Meteorologist John Patrick. John, what are you seeing from your angle?
Well, I have a few cameras here. I want also to show you some wind gusts that I found here over the last few minutes. This is the camera from Kalia Bay, and it's looking out toward the Gulf of Mexico. Kind of gives you a wide perspective of what's going on. We don't, well, we do have a few buildings over here on the left-hand side of the screen. Kind of hard to see, but it's raining so hard and the wind is blowing still, even towards northern Collier County, that we are seeing a lot of storm surges. Keep in mind, all this is, all this water here at the Gulf of Mexico, it's getting blown into all these canals here up into Kalia Bay and all the canals that feed into it. Also wanted to show you here Naples Grand. This is one that we've been watching as far as the storm surge. This is a clear camera. Well, it was. It looks like it's frozen up there, so we may have lost the internet connection to that one. But even though it is frozen, I mean, look at all this water that has come on shore here into this community near the Naples Grand Beach Resort. And this is the horrific storm surge that's going to continue through tonight and tomorrow. We've got a camera here from Shore Point Health. The winds are really starting to pick up here now. This is the Peace River. Punta Gorda on this side, Port Charlotte on the other side. We can barely see across the river. We've seen gusts here already approaching 50 and 60 miles an hour. That's going to continue to increase. And control room, if we can switch over here in the big monitor to our WeatherBug computer, our AWS source. And I wanted to show you some of these wind gusts. These have all happened within the last 30 minutes, especially this 111 here at the Naples Grand Beach Resort, that camera that I just showed you. With all that storm surge, that's 111 miles an hour. We're still, even though the center of that storm is removed from Naples, we're still seeing those gusts to 111. Our site there is a little bit elevated, so that number might be a little on the high side, but still over 100 miles per hour there at the Naples Grand Beach Resort. Mariner High School in the Cape, 110 miles per hour. That just happened at 12:44. So 15 minutes ago, we saw that 110-mile-an-hour gust in Cape Coral. So those hurricane-force winds are not only confined to right at the Gulf of Mexico, they are spreading inland a little bit. We told you about this one happened just before noon, Sanibel Harbor, 99 miles per hour in Kalia Bay. That other camera that I showed you here, not too long ago, less than 10 minutes ago, 12:51, it's 1 o'clock right now, 84-mile-an-hour wind gust. Again, a little bit elevated on the site there at Kalia Bay, but still, we're seeing hurricane-force winds, even though the center of that storm is well removed from North Collier County at this point. Those hurricane-force winds are spreading out and still hitting our beaches, and even here in Cape Coral, spreading a little bit inland. Allison, Rob, back over to you at NBC2.
We are just getting everybody's videos and pictures in, so please keep sending us if you are safe. And speaking of that, I want to show you video of a video in Cape Coral of a woman walking down the street here. So this is the first time I've seen this, and I think... Okay, so you can see a lot of the debris. Oh, that's exactly what we're talking about. You don't want to be outside. This is not the time to go outside and start cleaning up. Okay, so do you see what I mean? That even though the winds don't seem that high, that debris can hit you and injure you. So it's the debris, it's the water, it's anything in the water. You really need to be inside, not cleaning things up. I mean, preparations are over. It is what it is. We have to just wait for this storm to pass. Keep sending us your videos from inside your home. I'm getting a few images in right now that I'm going to have ready for you in a little bit. Videos are great. Pictures are great as well. We're seeing the water come up into Bonita Beach. I just got a photo I'll have for you in a little bit from my friend down through Barefoot Beach. The water is moving into those homes as well. And we're also getting reports of some trees down in North Fort Myers. And these were large trees. So the winds, like JP was mentioning, we're getting those winds up to 110 miles per hour for places like Cape Coral. Those winds will continue to push into places like North Fort Myers, into Babcock Ranch, into Suncoast Estates, into Fort Myers Shores, into downtown Fort Myers. Those winds are going to continue. Then farther south into places like Naples and Bonita and Estero, that water is going to continue to increase. I think we're getting some new video. Is this from Everglades City, Rob?
Yeah, Deja, why don't you just come take a step over here. As you're sending in your videos to us here at NBC2 and ABC7, I'm just kind of ingesting them as we speak. So I know it's difficult there. The camera's on a plug. So maybe perhaps it's easier if we just take the Doppler 2 source full. We're just getting some brand new video, Allison, from Allie, who is down in the Everglades City area. I thought at first it was in a boat, but she's in a car there, it appears, from that viewer perspective. And remember that Collier County, the surge is going to come a lot earlier than it will in Lee County and Charlotte County. So we are already seeing significant surge in Everglades City. I showed you just a few moments ago that we have confirmed storm surge in the Naples Bay area, where the water levels right now are running up to 5 feet, which is, if I've understood correctly, one of the highest storm surge values that have been observed for that particular observation site there in the city of Naples. So storm surge is happening right now in areas of Collier County. Right now the wind threat is the biggest threat in Lee County, and eventually it's going to move into areas of Charlotte County. Yeah, since we're talking about Collier County, though, here's a look at that water gauge report there in the Naples area. I guess go back to the graphics full then. So again, this is that look at that water level report for the Naples Bay area from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. That red spiking line shows you the storm surge. Blue shows you where it should be. Red shows you where it actually is. We have a big flooding, and that would be well above the major flooding stage for that particular observation site in the city of Naples from the National Weather Service. While I'm here, why don't we take a few live looks outside, try to give folks at home an idea of what's happening around town. This is a live look from the camera that we have on top of the Doppler radar. I'm going to angle this a bit toward the down, see if any of those streets are flooded. That's Central Avenue in the city of Fort Myers. It tends to flood really, really easily, and it looks like for the time being it's holding up. And I also want to scan the horizon here to see if I'm noticing any tree damage, at least from this perspective, and we're pretty high up. We might be missing some of the small scale details, but I don't see a whole bunch of trees knocked over, at least. That looks like there could be one there, though. Why don't we zoom in a touch? Perhaps some tree damage there, but it looks like the tree itself is holding up. You see some freshwater rain flooding there in that field between those two housing developments. But as we scan the sky, at least across this part of Fort Myers right now, you certainly don't see widespread structural damage to these apartments and these buildings here. Don't notice much in the way of major tree damage, though I did notice pulling in this morning that there was a large tree limb that had fallen just off of Fowler. So that's certainly good. We don't see significant damage here in this part of Fort Myers. All right, I'm told by my producer that we just have some brand new video coming in from Cape Coral, some tree damage. So why don't we take that full there as a source? The screen's a bit small there. It looks like oh, okay. We've got some flooded areas there, and Palmetto Pines Gulf is what I'm hearing there. So we have some tree damage there in that part of Cape Coral, and very understandable. We've had confirmed.
Yeah.
We've had confirmed wind gusts now in excess of 100 miles an hour in parts of Lee County, and as John Patrick showed you just a few minutes ago, winds in excess of 110 miles an hour in parts of Collier County there at the Naples Grand Beach Resort. Why don't we touch base here with Doppler 2 again? We'll take a live look if we still have electricity from the top of the Diamond Head Resort on Fort Myers Beach. This camera is no longer updating, so it's possible that the power is out at the Diamond Head Resort, or we just might be in a bit of a glitch there. But it would be very understandable if electricity was out on Estero Island, considering the flooding that's going on and the very strong winds that have been pushing across coastal Lee County. And this here is a perspective inland, deep inland in the Babcock Ranch area, one of the safest places to be from storm surge at least. But as you'll notice, some real strong winds there pushing across this part of eastern Charlotte County. It looks like the trees are managing just fine for the time being, but we'll be touching base, of course, with our friends inland as we keep folks on the coast ahead of the storm surge event that will likely get worse here over the next few hours. Oh, look at the wind there. Wow. Yeah, that's really something else. So since I have you, why don't we switch back our source? So we'll keep Doppler 2 at the wall, and I'm going to turn this over to the interactive hand tracker. One of my friends in Bonita Springs had just asked about what's going on in Bonita Springs. So let me turn on the interactive part here, and I'll grab the correct weather clicker and make the hike over to the wall here. For our friends who are watching in Lee County, the reason we're focusing so much on what's happening in western Lee County is because this is where the eye of this hurricane is moving on shore. If you're watching in areas like Bonita Springs and Estero, the eye wall is farther to the west of you, so the worst and most substantial winds are still just a touch to the west. I have been in touch with some neighbors of mine in Estero. They've reported that electricity is out in neighborhoods along Corkscrew Road. So in many of these communities across southern Lee County, even though you will be spared the brunt of the worst of this eye wall, there will certainly be some tree damage here in these parts of Bonita Springs as the winds have been gusting in parts of Collier County here in North Naples in excess of 110 miles per hour, as based on that anemometer report that's on I believe it's on the Kalia Bay building, which is a taller building, so the winds will be a little more elevated. Higher up the go, of course, the stronger the winds are going to be. But certainly evidence of wind gusts in excess of 100 miles per hour in these neighborhoods here across northwest Collier and the southern tier of Lee County. As I mentioned, though, when you consider what's happening, a very slow movement of the eye of the hurricane, north-northeast only at 9 miles an hour. We'll lapse the radar here for the past 30 minutes and try to see any trends. If it looks like it's going to bounce one way or the other, we'll run that back one more time. Doesn't really want to update all too much there, but we really have no other evidence to believe that it's going any other direction besides north-northeast. And again, that forward speed sure is slow as it continues to chug there to the north-northeast at only 9 miles an hour. So real slow here. So unfortunately, the worst of the weather approaching areas of the western Charlotte County. I mentioned that at the top of the hour here, we were talking about how Rotunda would be expecting the brunt of the storm here by 1:09. So if we zoom in here closer to where Rotunda is at on the western side of the Cape Hayes Peninsula, it's 1:08 this moment in time. The leading edge of the eye wall now less than 2 miles away from these neighborhoods in Rotunda. Since we're here over top of western Charlotte, let's try to get a perspective, if we can, of the winds. And yikes, look at that. These bright colors here are indicating some really, really strong winds aloft. Wow, 140 miles per hour is where the radar beam is picking up on the wind speeds right now. Remember, though, this is at beam height, so as the beam shoots out from the radar tower, it goes higher and higher into the atmosphere. But right now, above Earth's surface, we have evidence of winds of 140 miles an hour. That would be to the south of Rotunda, just to the west of the Placida area, and to the west and southwest of Cape Hayes. If you are in Charlotte County, now is the time to be in the absolute safest part of your house, lowest level of your home, most interior section of your home, and away from windows. Treat this as if there was a big tornado right over top of your house. Unfortunately, this moves slower than a tornado, but as you'll notice in here, based on the evidence we're seeing from the wind speeds, this is just as strong, if not stronger, than the tornadoes that we oftentimes see here in South Florida. I understand. Go ahead.
Doppler radar. Let's first go to Naples. We have cars starting to get flooded in that region. Here's just a quick update before we go to that video. Here it is. Okay, so this is in Naples. The water is coming up substantially in Naples, and you guys are first to get this storm surge, but guess what? The threat is not over. This will continue to move on in until we get those winds to turn not on shore. They continue to be out of the south.
Did you guys get that
and
note that
even though we're not seeing that strong southerly wind, you're not seeing the winds as high as they are into Charlotte County. We're seeing the winds stay on shore and pushing that water in. I do want to show you this 1 o'clock advisory and just a couple of things to note from it. If we could pull out to camera 5 here at our big screen. The 1 o'clock advisory keeps it moving off to the north-northeast at 9 miles per hour. That's somewhat of any piece of good news we can get because it's still moving. If that were to slow down even more, I would grow more concerned, as more as I already am, with the amount of water that we're seeing push on in. Unfortunately, this was with the angle of attack that this storm was having in our region and the shape of our coastlines. We mentioned it last night that this could end up being a worst case scenario, and it's proving to do that. Notice how big the eye is. It's 34 miles wide, and this will take a few hours to continue to push off to the north and east. So I do want to kind of show you where we're starting to see that heavy rain push on in. This will also be associated with those wind gusts we've been tracking. 110 miles per hour, especially into this northeastern part of the storm. Even more high wind gusts just offshore, but that's just a sign of how strong this storm is with its momentum off to the north and east. So First Alert Live Doppler, we're through Matlacha, so parts of Pine Island starting to get some lighter rain. You will have a little bit of a break in the heavy rain and the gusty winds for parts of Pine Island and also for North Captiva and Captiva as that eye starts to move on in. That's where you're beginning to be halfway done when we still have the back of the storm to go through and we still have even more storm surge to come on through. So moving along Pine Island Road, in Cape Coral, we're getting a lot of video in from areas in Cape Coral where the water levels continue to rise. So into Miracle Parkway, anywhere south of Cape Coral Parkway, still some light rain pushing on in. The heaviest rain might be just to the north of you, but you will see that water push on in. I can't stress that enough in parts of Cape Coral. It's probably too late to leave. You really need to think about how to keep you and your family safe over the next few hours as that southerly wind just kind of catches up into Cape Coral. Goes through the Sanibel Causeway. It has nowhere else to go but into Cape Coral or up the Caloosahatchee. Here's a look at the wide view. I put a timestamp on the back edge of this eye wall just to show you. And again, keep these times in an estimate. And every time we do show you these timestamps, they're all going to be a little bit different here or there depending on exactly where we put that storm track. Are we putting it on the green area, the yellow area, the orange area? I just want to give you a general idea of how many more hours we have to go with these conditions going to deteriorate. So it is 1:13 right now. By 4 to 5 o'clock, the back edge of this storm is moving through places like Northport, Burnt Store Marina, our Cape Hayes Peninsula area that are just starting to see the heaviest winds from the front edge of the eye right now. This is a prolonged event, and like we mentioned and we've been saying earlier this week, first come the storms, the strong winds, the threat for tornadoes, the high rainfall. Then as we head through today, that rainfall will start to go away, winds will turn behind the storm and we'll continue to see these waters come up. So the fact that the waters are already as high as they are, it's not boding well for the future. Farther to the south and east, so these winds are not going to be as strong as where we're tracking through parts of the Cape Hayes Peninsula and parts of Cape Coral right now, but I do want to put a storm track on places like Gateway, into Buckingham, into Estero Bay, San Carlos Park, into Island Park. What time are these winds going to start to move into your region? Because you're just still having 50, 60 mile per hour winds, and I'm saying that relatively, that's the point we're at, where I'm saying just 50 to 60 because of how powerful this storm is. Winds will pick up within the next 15 to 20 minutes for parts of Gateway, San Carlos Park about 1:30. Fort Myers Beach will continue to see those winds push on in as well. And remember, now that we're on the southern part of this eye wall, those winds are going to be pushing more onshore, bringing that high water level into our region. The big part of that storm is about 12 miles wide, and we are seeing that continuing to push on, and with the lightning too. That lightning, it's going down here or there, but I would like it to go away completely, and it's not. The storm is pretty powerful. I do want to pull up a couple of videos that we have. If we could go to our Mito computer, we do have, I think we have some videos pulled up. Let's go to that full. I'm going to walk over to my producer. This is Sanibel still that we're having. I'm going to walk over here, see what we're tracking. Sanibel, wow, you can see that SUV in the corner there underneath the truck. Okay, so you see that white SUV and then the trees there. This is from Patrick Bailey. Lots of heavy rain out there. This is also Sanibel, Keith. So this is Sanibel. You can see the water's coming up there. We're going to see that continue to rise as well. Again, for Sanibel specifically, you are getting a little bit of a break in the actual rain right now. Like, you're in the eye of the storm. Let's take Doppler 1 computer. You're starting to see that eye of the storm just kind of bring that calm weather, and it can be a very eerie feeling. Honestly, I hope that no one is feeling the eye of the storm. I hope that anyone that lives on North Captiva, Sanibel, St. James City, Pine Island, Matlacha, hopefully you are well inland and you're saying, maybe you're catching on your ring camera or something, but I hope you are not there experiencing that eye of the storm, because it is still quite dangerous in those regions as that water continues to come up. I'm going to send it over to Chief Meteorologist John Patrick in the ABC7 studio. What are we tracking there?
We have of course, our live radar. We've been looking at the winds, and we've been tracking these things going onshore, and we're still seeing some pretty impressive winds. I want to go back and first and foremost show you what we have tracked in real time. These are wind gusts, since we've been talking about winds here over the past few minutes. These are what we have tracked so far on our neighborhood weather network at ABC7 and NBC2. 111 at the Naples Grand Beach Resort. That location, our weather station there is a little bit elevated, so it's going to read a little bit higher, but 100+ miles per hour as far as the wind, certainly a reality there at the Naples Grand Beach Resort. We've had all kinds of storm surge flooding there. I'll show you a camera from that area in just a second. Mariner High School in the Cape, 110 miles per hour. That happened at 12:44. A little earlier at the Yacht Club, Sanibel Harbor Yacht Club on the Fort Myers side of the causeway there, 99-mile-an-hour winds, and Kalia Bay at 86 miles per hour. We continue to monitor Naples Grand, because this has been the most fascinating event to watch. The water continues to come up. I do believe, since maybe we've got that 111-mile-an-hour wind gust there, maybe our camera has gone out, because I think that's the still image there that we saw the last time going around. I wanted to show this one here from Shore Point Health in Punta Gorda. The wind is picking up there. Looks like we might have knocked the camera out there. Let's, sometimes it'll take a moment or two to refresh, but we've seen these winds pick up as the hurricane gets closer to Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte. So we are going to lose the internet. We're going to lose power to our camera, so we may get these images frozen from time to time like that one is. Let's go to Kalia Bay, because this is Collier County, but it's kind of a wider view, and you can see that we still have these hurricane-force winds right along the beaches of Collier County. And I look right in here. Not only can you see the rain kind of blowing in sheets off from the right to the left. That's coming in from the Gulf of Mexico, and that's driving in water from the Gulf all the way up into Kalia Bay and all the canals that feed off of Kalia Bay, or normally would feed Kalia Bay, because normally the opposite would be happening. The water be coming out there. But this is being forced in. And so that's what's going over the Naples Grand Beach Resort, and that's what's going over Fort Myers Beach and Sanibel and Captiva. It's that water being forced from the Gulf of Mexico up over the beaches and onto land. Another thing that we are dealing with, and probably is happening with our cameras here, power outages across the area. Where you see these red counties, that's over 100,000 people without power, according to this product. That green area up there in Charlotte County, that's right around 5 to 10,000. And we're going to see this number likely continue to go up as we go through the event and more people lose power. The wind, we've been talking about what the wind is currently. Let's go ahead and show you what is forecast as we get through the rest of the afternoon. 87 miles per hour at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So we're still going to have some hurricane force winds. And again, this is our forecast model predicting what the winds it sees for the afternoon and evening. But 87 out here. Hurricane force winds, don't necessarily pay attention to the exact number, but the idea of what the model is trying to forecast for us as we get through the rest of the afternoon and evening. So this blue and purple area, those are the hurricane force winds moving onshore. Notice how 86 miles per hour. This is still 4 o'clock this afternoon. Hurricane force winds are still pounding the beaches of Lee County and starting to go up to Charlotte Harbor. And that's going to start the storm surge event for Charlotte Harbor. Right now, the wind is out of the east, coming down the Peace River and the Myakka River. That's going to change after the center of the storm passes by, and the water is going to be driven in this direction, coming from the Gulf of Mexico onshore. Right now, it's coming from the opposite direction because of that easterly wind. That hurricane force wind does start to let up as we head into 5, 6, and 7 o'clock. We're still very close to hurricane force winds out here on the Lee Island coast, even though the storm will be off to your north by that point. And then as the storm continues to pull off towards central Florida, getting into this evening, it's still tropical storm force winds all the way from the Western Cape out towards the islands. You see here in Naples, it's breezy and very gusty, but the tropical storm force winds heading into this evening don't pick up until you head back into Lee County. We're going to see tropical storm force winds spread all the way into Hendry and Glades County. You see here 46 and 44 mile per hour winds. Even over by Lake Okeechobee, it's going to be gusty. Not as gusty as your friends in LaBelle or Lehigh Acres or Immokalee. Certainly not as windy as it is right now out toward the beaches, but it's still going to be not the best of evenings around Clewiston and Moorhaven, and you'll have those spiraling rain bands and occasional higher gusts as we go through the evening as well. Back onto our live Doppler radar, the analysis here shows that perhaps with the area here on the eastern side of the eye wall turning green here and less red, we might be seeing the winds come down just a little bit. Earlier when we were looking at this, let me get rid of that bar at the bottom of the screen there because we don't need that anymore. This area in here had filled in red, which had us concerned with all the lightning that was there. We're still seeing a good chunk of lightning, though, up here in this part of the eye wall. And there's some more there that's just popping up right now. We're 46 lightning strikes just within the last 15 minutes. So as we go through the afternoon, the worst of the winds will stay offshore, but we're still popping hurricane force winds around a good chunk of western Lee County and western Charlotte County and points right near the center of the eye wall. This is a computer velocity product. So this takes our Doppler radar information and it measures the wind speeds that it's seeing within the Doppler radar. So again, this is not real-time information as like our neighborhood weather network is, where it's actually we've got weather sensors. This is the Doppler radar estimating what the winds are. And you see here just offshore, 121 miles per hour out there right now. Punta Gorda, just to the east of you out here near Vermont Road, 90 miles per hour. We're probably seeing close to that in Punta Gorda and in Port Charlotte as well. Englewood, 94 miles per hour. Northport, 90 miles per hour right now. Again, right in here, this is the eye of the storm, so we're not getting any wind readings from there. Cape Coral, 99 miles per hour in that orange area right near the western side of Cape Coral. And as I pan over to the east and southeast a little bit here, this is just bad radar information. It kind of breaks up over here as you get towards Lehigh, but a 77 mile an hour wind here near Bayshore. Iona also a 77-mile-an-hour wind. So it's still gusty over here in eastern Lee County. It's still gusty in eastern Charlotte County, but not nearly as bad as it is over here where you see these yellow and orange colors a little bit closer to that northern eye wall where those winds are 120, 130 miles an hour. And if I were to go out and clock in the Gulf of Mexico, that's where we're seeing 140, 150, and that's where those readings for the advisory are coming from. Thankfully, those highest winds should stay offshore, but still extremely heavy wind event for the coastal areas, especially Lee and Charlotte County and even Collier County. Even though that center of the storm is away from you right now, we have seen over 100-mile-an-hour winds there recently, just within the last hour. So this is going to continue for a good long while, and we'll continue tracking it. Right now, I'm going to send it back over to Allison and Rob over in NBC2.
Thank you very much for that, John. I'll take it from here for a moment. We're getting some new viewer photos into our NBC2 and ABC7 partnership here. This latest one came in just a few moments ago from... All right, so this is from Fort Myers Beach, different than the other source that I was talking about. So this here is brand new video coming into us from Fort Myers Beach. There is saltwater storm surge flooding occurring right now on Estero Island. It is a very dangerous situation because as you can see how fast the water is moving, storm surge takes lives because of how fast it moves. So unfortunately right now for folks on Estero Island, you are stuck in place here until this event is over. If I could ask now to take the Doppler 2 source and let's touch base with our neighbors farther inland, have some new photos of some damage in North Fort Myers. This was sent to us from one of my friends on Twitter. Looks like a royal palm taking out what would appear to be a pool cage. It's not clear in the photo if it actually landed on the house or not, but certainly some damage there to that pool cage in that part of North Fort Myers. We've also recently got some video here from Kevin Brand in the city of Cape Coral. That will be a look at one of the canals there. I'm not sure if it's a freshwater or saltwater canal in the Cape, but some damage to that large boat there sitting on the canal. And you know, very understandable when you consider how fast the winds have been moving across the southwest Florida here this afternoon. With in some cases here, we've had winds well in excess of 110 miles per hour. Here's a video that was recently sent to us from Everglades City. This again is where the storm surge event is happening right now. You can see for yourself how deep the water is as that person there. This video was sending us to Allie from the Everglades City area. Saltwater storm surge flooding occurring right now there in that part of Everglades City. And this video particularly scary from the person didn't say exactly where they were from. I just have their zip code, and this was likely from the Matlacha area or at some point close to North Cape Coral. So this is from Joe, and you can see for yourself just how windy it is there, as evidenced by the winds, but in the trees, but certainly by those large waves there by that body of water. So that is from some part of northwest Lee County. If you do send us some videos, please tell us where you're sending them in from. It helps to give us a better context and understanding as to what you're seeing on the ground as we help to walk you through this. The producer's telling me that I believe we have Lacey Lee. I'm afraid I can't hear you, so just to go ahead and... We have flooding in Naples. Yes, we have flooding in Naples. There's a live look from the flooding in Naples there as the control room helps to communicate what we're seeing there from their perspective. You know, the city of Naples itself is inbound for some potential significant storm surge with this event. If I could ask the control room here to work with us on the fly, I will walk over to the chroma wall and we'll try to give some folks from the perspective on where the center of the storm is moving and how that risk of storm surge is going to evolve over the next few hours here. So I'll walk over here to this. So that video you saw just momentarily was from the city of Naples. So remember just real simply here how the wind's moving around the hurricane. Right here is the eye. So if you are located to the south of the center of the storm, south of the eye, right now your winds are turning increasingly onshore. So this is why we're seeing such substantial storm surge flooding in areas like Fort Myers Beach on Estero Island, like you just saw a moment ago in the city of Naples, because again, our winds have turned onshore. So the salt water, the water from the Gulf of Mexico, is now being pushed toward the shoreline. It continues to be the opposite situation right now in Charlotte County, because at least for the time being, for at least another hour or so, you continue to have an offshore wind here as the air is blowing from land toward the water. But the problem here for Charlotte County is that this eye wall continues to move into the western side of the county. So again, we have to stress the worst of the weather right now in our entire community is right here, running from Minnesota to Rotunda. You are in the eye wall as you speak. It's moving across the western side of Charlotte Harbor. It's moving across the western side of the Cape Hayes Peninsula, and it's moving to the north-northeast only at 9 miles an hour. So again, a very slow-moving weather event here. If you're hunkered down in these parts of western Charlotte County, and now we'll extend that to the southern tier of Sarasota County, if you're in these areas, you have to be in the most secure location in your home. That would be on the lowest floor of your home, in the most interior section of your home, and away from things like windows, a closet, a laundry room. Those are the safest places to be right now, especially in the western section of Charlotte County and the southern tier of Sarasota County because of the movement of this hurricane off to the north-northeast at 9 miles an hour. You can see just based on the reflectivity how heavy the rain is here across this part of San Casa and Rotunda and Cape Hayes and Placida. The absolute worst of this storm, at least for what we have on land, is now moving across these parts of western Charlotte and eventually here into areas of Sarasota and DeSoto County. It looks like Allison Ray has some new video, so why don't I send things over to Weather Touch. The source will be Doppler 1.
Tracking more flooding coming into. Now, this is Bonita, and one thing I want to note now is that Naples has an emergency curfew in place. You cannot travel around Naples. I'm getting video of some folks driving around in their car, sending us video. I don't need video that bad for you to drive around in your car. It only takes 6 inches of water for your car to start moving and out of your control. We know it's flooding. Stay safe. That is priority. The only priority. We can get pictures as we head through. This is actually Bonita. This is not North Naples. This is through Barefoot Beach, right off Bonita Beach Road. So there is a pool right there that is completely submerged with all of this water coming on in. This is second story here, so this is going to be approaching, I mean, that has to be a couple feet already for this far inland, so that water will continue to rise as well. Again, this is in Bonita Beach, and as we go forward, this is into North Fort Myers. I have this tilted here because the photo's a little lopsided, so I wanted to see what we were looking at. The strongest winds have not even gone through North Naples yet. I just felt some very strong winds out here at our station that will continue to push up closer to North Fort Myers. I have a very large tree down here over the road as well. So this is going to continue with those strong winds even into places inland. You'll have wind gusts in excess of 90 miles per hour. Let's pull up the AWS computer. You can either put it in touch or you can take it full if you want to put it in touch. So look at these numbers. Pinchers Marina, that is near downtown Fort Myers. We're looking at 108 mile per hour gust. That is significant. Cape Coral also at 110. Fort Myers, we had that one from Sanibel earlier today at 99 miles per hour. I do want to do a little bit of analysis here with the radar. If we could just keep with Doppler 1 computer up full here. We're still not seeing this storm as it makes landfall really start to weaken at all. That's what's really powerful. So next up, where you see these storms right on top of 41, so places like the Forum are seeing those strong winds, places down even just into places like Gladiolus. This will carry on into parts of Lehigh Acres. You still even had the strongest winds just yet. This is still pushing into your region, and then it will eventually reach into Babcock Ranch. So those light showers around Babcock Ranch, around Lehigh, around the Bell, these will continue to push on in. Right through Captiva and Sanibel and North Captiva, we're seeing the winds drop. It is completely calm with the winds, but the water is still going to continue to rise. This storm track back off here is another couple of hours, still at 8-9 miles per hour off to north and east. We're starting to see a little bit of erosion on that front edge just because it is moving on land. But this is still pretty powerful, and when this comes on through for places like North Captiva, Boca Grande, and Cape Coral again, and then up through Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda again, this is still going to provide another dose of 100-mile-per-hour winds, now just from a different direction. And we've been seeing all the water continue to rise in parts of Naples. That will continue. That's why that curfew's in place. Those areas in Cape Coral and Port Charlotte, that water will rise once this storm gets a little bit farther to the northeast of Port Charlotte and Arcadia, and we're not even there just yet. Farther to the south, though, if we could pull up Doppler 1 full, I want to do a little bit more analysis and timestamp for you so you know exactly what we're dealing with for the rest of the evening. I do want to kind of time this out for some of our inland spots here. Into North Fort Myers, you're starting to see those real powerful winds move through, even through Suncoast Estates, through 41 and 75. This continues to push off to the northeast at only about 10 miles per hour. North Fort Myers, you'll see another gust of wind at 139. The Herons Glen Golf and Country Club, 147. Let me extend that a couple of hours, and that will be pushing into Babcock Ranch within the next hour and 45 minutes. Up near the Vermont Shooting Club, that will be there within the next 2 hours, just shy of 2 hours. Those winds will move on into your region. Let me time out some of the winds back off into the eye of the storm once again. This still has a ways to go. Let me change the speed at only about, we'll be optimistic at 10 miles per hour, and setting it out another 2 hours, we're still offshore. We still have 2 hours to go before this is even making its way closer to the island. So Bokeelia, timestamp there, 5:20. So that's another couple of hours before the backage of this is moving on through. And we also have, okay, so right here, we have a live look at Naples. Those are streets and cars completely submerged. Do we know what street this is? Okay. I don't know what street this is, but the water continues to move on in. Again, a curfew in place for Naples. The water is coming up very high. I think you see those cars in the distance there, and I think our crews are safe. They're from an elevated spot here looking at that water, but that will continue to move on in. And Rob, we're not seeing these numbers, the storm pushed far enough inland to say that, hey, we're going to see those waters stop increasing and go down. Right, yeah.
Look at that.
This
that
is
up to the windows of those SUVs.
Right, and multiple cars there.
Oh, geez. And remember that this is salt water. This is salt water that's moving in from the Gulf of Mexico, and salt water is corrosive. It is not like, freshwater rain flooding is also detrimental as well, but this is salt water that's pushing into areas of Naples, and you can just, oh, geez, my gosh, look at how fast that water is moving too. This is why storm surge is so dangerous. Not only is it rising fast, but it moves. There is movement to this kind of water when it's pushed in from the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean or the Caribbean Sea or whatever body of water you happen to live next to. So as you see this event unfold right now in the city of Naples, real heartbreaking when you consider, that's going to cost a lot of money to fix. The things like cars and homes. It's expensive to fix these things, especially when you throw salt water in the mix. So let us just simply hope that the people who live in those neighborhoods are in a safe position here as they continue to watch this live here. If I could ask Keith to step aside there. Here's a look at the Naples Bay. You're talking about this saltwater flooding. If we could take the Doppler 2 source here, the storm surge event right now has major flooding status at the Naples Bay area. The blue lines in that graphic here, and I'll step over to the wall just for a moment to better point this out. So at Naples Bay, so at Naples Bay, the expected water levels rise and fall with these high tide cycles. So this would be a low tide cycle. This would be a high tide cycle. It's pretty predictable when you consider what the low and high tides tend to be. But right now, this red line right there shows you the actual measured water levels. So last night, when Collier County had such a substantial offshore wind, the water levels were very modestly falling below the average amount of water that's typically in the Naples Bay area. But today, once the winds turn onshore, you can see how fast the water rose there, and is now, based on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Tides and Gauge report here, is up at major flooding status, up and above 5 feet. And you saw there live just a moment ago, and if we have that shot again, why don't we take that live there from the Naples area. All right, we can't take it live at the moment, but again, you saw for yourself there for several minutes that fast-moving water in areas of Naples, and this is why that shelter-in-place order is in place right now for these communities. You do not want to be outside with fast-moving, rapid water moving that fast. It looks like that shot's back up now. Wow. Is there any way we could pop sound? Is there sound available on this, Michael? Looks like there's a little boat there that's loose as well. We can't patch through in this. We can, if we're allowed to take the sound, go ahead and take the sound.
Doing anything. There are urban search and rescue teams. As I drove in here, one thing you'll know, Chris, as you drive through a hurricane, you always see these convoys on the highway of these cherry pickers, of these linemen trucks, ready in place to deal with trees and electrical lines, but everything is shut down for now. No, there's nobody out there. And one of the problems we're going to have in Naples and points north of here is when this all settles down and the water starts to recede, which might be sometime late tonight, there are going to be cars in the middle of the street. So emergency vehicles are not going to be able to get through in some cases. They're going to have to get tow trucks in here first to get rid of some of these cars. But all around us, everywhere I look, anything that is not built into the ground at this point and not in a foundation is loosening up and floating away.
Wow, that, in front of the Land Rover there, that's a Ford car sedan. That water is being pushed up and over the roof of that Ford car. Wow, boy, that is just a chilling image. If you're without electricity and you're listening on our radio partnerships, what we're looking at right now is live images from the city of Naples of substantial storm surge flooding. We are noticing there's probably, was that 5 or 6 cars on that street that are in very deep water right now. Some of the water moving up and over the top of some of those four-door sedans. And it looked like at one point there, I've seen some other videos coming from the Naples area of cars that are starting to drift around. It doesn't take much water for you to, hydroplane. It doesn't take much water for you to lose control of your car. But when the water goes up and over the doors and is up at the window level, I mean, it's going to start to move. But we are still only in the opening act of this event because the winds will stay onshore in these communities that are seeing the substantial storm surge flooding for a while. This is the reason people were ordered to evacuate. It's because of storm surge flooding. There's nothing that first responders can do now to get to these areas because there is rapid moving water in the streets of parts of Naples. So this is why if you're in this area, if you're anywhere in western Collier County, you have to stay in place until this event finally wraps up. And these, especially in the areas that are seeing the storm surge flooding, especially when the waters start to recede. We've been talking so much and taking those live images from Naples, and thank you to the control room for making sure we were able to watch that live together, and for our folks who are listening on the radio to get some perspective on what's happening on the ground. But look, Naples is not getting the brunt of the worst of the winds. For that, we have to move up here to the north-northwest, and as we move here toward the northwest sections of Lee County, the eye wall now is approaching the city of, or as they're moving over the city of Cape Coral here, moving toward the Burnt Store Marina area, up and across Pirate Harbor, and eventually here continues to move farther and farther into areas of Charlotte County, now getting very, very close again to areas like the city of Punta Gorda. Let me make sure we have a good radar site there. And then as you'll notice, all across the Cape Hayes Peninsula, just, terrible, terrible weather. The eye of a Category 4 hurricane right now is moving across the Cape Hayes Peninsula. The latest stats we had from the National Hurricane Center still had maximum sustained winds at 155 miles per hour. A storm becomes a Category 5 hurricane when the maximum sustained winds are 157 miles per hour. So this is a very high-end Category 4 hurricane that's been making landfall in our community here this afternoon. And right now, the absolute worst of it here is moving across these neighborhoods on the western side of Charlotte County, so across San Casa and Rotunda, Cape Hayes and Placida. You can only imagine what the weather looks like outside there in these neighborhoods, and let's hope that the people who are riding this out now in the western side of Charlotte are in the safe place in their home. And again, that's the lowest part of your home, most interior section of your home, and most certainly away from windows, because you cannot escape serious wind damage when you encounter winds like this. If we could try to do some pixel query points here, we can get at least a perspective of what some of these winds are doing. The brighter the colors, the worse the winds. So just offshore, we're still seeing evidence at beam height of winds in excess of 125 miles per hour. That would peg it at 130. Now that is measured, of course, a decent distance offshore. So like from where Rotunda West is, where we're seeing evidence aloft, up and above the Gulf of Mexico, 20 miles offshore, there's evidence of 130-mile-per-hour sustained winds. And again, everything continues to lift to the north-northeast, but very, very slowly at just 9 miles an hour. So again, across northwest Lee and especially across western Charlotte, you need to stay in your most secure location of your home until the eye is eventually able to pull away. But because it's only moving at 9 miles an hour, it's going to be a long time before this finally gets to the point where we can start to leave the safest parts of our home here. I believe I'm going to send things over to Chief Meteorologist Allison Ray. Allison, what are you seeing from your perspective?
So what I want to do is time out when we are going to see the water stop rising in Naples. That was the area that we were going to see that water come up first. Marco Island, Everglades City, coastal Collier County. When is the next chance that those winds will finally stop coming on shore? I want to give you a little bit more of that futurecast perspective. This is the image right now that we've been tracking, that Rob did a great job kind of zooming around, showing you those strongest winds, showing you the heaviest rain, still moving through parts of the Charlotte Harbor right now. The winds are offshore. We were showing those images earlier of Charlotte Harbor almost completely dry. Once the storm moves off to the north and east, that will change a little bit. It will start to get pretty wet once again. So we do have not a lot of heavy rain, and like we mentioned earlier, the rain will end and the storm surge continues, especially for areas in Naples and North Naples. So I do want to walk you through this futurecast to give people a better idea of how long we're going to be dealing with this. What you want to pay attention to here are these winds onshore. Naples, Marco Island, Everglades City, Bonita, Estero Bay. We're still dealing with those really strong onshore winds, while the peak of the actual wind gusts are still making their way onshore through the Cape Hayes Peninsula and up through parts of DeSoto County. Here we are at 4 o'clock. So we're fast forwarding now just about 2 hours from where we are now, and we still have onshore winds. So Naples through 4 o'clock, the water is still increasing. As we head, let's fast forward again to 7 o'clock. Now we're starting to see the onshore winds a little bit of a different direction, but it's still coming in through Naples and Marco Island. As we head into places like Bonita, it will continue. Cape Coral, we haven't reached that storm surge just yet. So we're seeing the flooding concerns in parts of Cape Coral. And when I mention Cape Coral, also keep in mind, up the Caloosahatchee, that water will continue to move into parts of North Fort Myers and parts of Fort Myers shores on the other side of the river, including also Fort Myers, downtown Fort Myers, McGregor. What I haven't seen yet are any images coming in from the McGregor region. If we have, maybe I missed them. McGregor, Cypress, the Cypress area, also into Whiskey Creek. Wondering how that area is dealing with the water. So fast forwarding now to Thursday in the morning, we still have those onshore winds. They won't be as strong as what we're dealing with right now, but those onshore winds will continue, and that will kind of keep that water pegged in, if you will, against our region. I'm just listening 1 second. Okay, so we have new video now of Naples flooding. Let's go to this video. Okay, so this is Bayfront Place. This is that shopping center across from Tin City. So you can see all of the water starting to move into that shopping area right there. The wind continues to blow. And you know what? Look at the winds there. We're not even having the strongest winds, and the winds, of course, already doing, they're gusting up to 30 or 40 miles per hour there. And this is Vanderbilt Drive that we're seeing that water come up there as well, just close to the beach. Water continues to increase. And I don't see any perspective. Okay, there's the perspective of the car. So it's just coming up to the tire levels in that car. We're not seeing it as high as that other perspective we had in Naples. But like I mentioned, that storm surge is not done yet for Naples. So these numbers will continue to climb. As we watch the storm get closer and closer to our region, the storm surge numbers just kept increasing. And I can't imagine how they don't keep on increasing into the overnight hours and through tomorrow. So if you are in Naples, hopefully you are in a safe place, and we're going to be tracking this through the next few days and see how this goes through. All right, here it is again, First Alert Live Doppler. Areas that are just starting to see the rain continue, and keep in mind areas like Babcock and Lehigh, even Immokalee and Ave Maria, the rain will start to fade away, but the wind gusts will continue to pick up. Your rainfall amounts won't be that much greater from where they are right now. We're just going to have to see how the water kind of equals itself out over the next hour or so, pushing through Cape Coral. Areas I'm still going to be watchful of is Cape Coral and also through Island Park and Estero Bay. We're hearing reports of those waters still continuing to rise in those regions, especially Estero Bay. I mean, it's just holding all of that water going through Lover's Key and then over to places like San Carlos Park. East of 41 in San Carlos Park technically is not included in that timetable of worst case scenario, but because we're seeing that. Hold on, just listening to my producer 1 second. Okay, so Sanibel storm surge, let's take a look at this. This is going to be a time lapse. So this is going to give you an idea of, this is from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And just within 1 hour, you can see how high that water just completely took over. Is it going to replay here? You can see how high that water came up within just 1 hour. And that's why hopefully everyone evacuated out into Sanibel. That water came up a couple of feet in just an hour, sitting through the eye wall right now. That eye wall will continue to push off to the north and east again and again over the next few hours. Imagine 9 miles per hour. How much is that? If you're walking, you can walk a mile in 15, 20 minutes. So maybe a pretty fast-paced runner could run. That's really fast. But, you know, this is going to be pretty slow. It's very slow moving as it pushes off to the north and east. I'm going to send it over to Chief Meteorologist. I think John Patrick is over in the ABC studio. What are you tracking, JP?
We are tracking the movement of this hurricane, as you mentioned, pretty slowly off to the north-northeast at about 9 miles an hour. And it's just amazing to see how fast in just 1 hour that storm surge came up there over Periwinkle Way in Sanibel. Right now they have the calm. They're in the eye of the storm, so we're probably not going to see that come up too much. But then the backside of the storm is going to come through, and that's what's really going to drive that storm surge event even greater. Those winds, which will again be hurricane force strength on the backside of that eye wall. I wanted to show you the wide view of the storm because it's a massive storm. You know, we sometimes compare this to Hurricane Charlie because of the placement of the storm, but Charlie was very, very small. Look at how large. I mean, we're seeing outer rain bands all the way up to Jacksonville right now, and the center of the storm is still just coming on shore here in southwest Florida. Now, as we go through the afternoon, as Allison mentioned, inland areas, we're starting to see the rain break apart. So we're not going to see as much rain over toward Moorhaven and Clewiston and into Immokalee as we're going to see around Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, Northport, and those areas. Same in Naples. You're going to keep the wind for a little while, but this rain shield very shortly is going to start to pull off to the north. We may see a little bit of back building with the rain bands, but it's not going to be a steady rain. It'll be a rain band, and then you'll get a break, and the wind is going to continue as we go through the evening. So let's go ahead. We'll stop the lapse here, and we'll actually zoom down in and show you the areas that we are watching here for the strongest of the winds. You can see right now, this is starting to pull up towards Sarasota with some of that outer eye wall. Venice is certainly on that northern edge of the outer eye wall. Same in Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda here, right in this red area. Both of those areas getting pounded with wind right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see 100-mile-an-hour winds in either of those areas. The same here with El Jobim. Now, for now, the wind is coming offshore, so we're not seeing storm surge yet on the Peace River or the Mayaca River. The water is still being pushed that way off toward the Gulf of Mexico. After we get through the eye and the backside of that storm, the bottom side, the south side, pushes the winds onshore, then we're going to see water rush right up Charlotte Harbor and up the Mayaca River and the Peace River. Mostly the Peace River because it's oriented southwest to northeast, and that's how the water is going to be pushed up Charlotte Harbor. So that's going to be another area that we're going to watch very closely for a major storm surge event. But I want to do a track on here for you as we get over the next hour. We're going to go ahead and do kind of this eastern side of the outer eye wall. And this is going at 9 miles per hour off to the north-northeast. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll project this out to 2 hours instead of just a half an hour. So Port Charlotte, you're just right on the very edge of this. And you'll get the heaviest of that outer eye wall starting at 2:13 this afternoon. So it's 1:52 right now you have about 20 minutes, 21 minutes, according to our track here, before you really start to get that nastiest of the northern eye wall. So it's knocking right on your doorstep there in Port Charlotte. Punta Gorda, 234. Again, not too far away. You're already having likely close to hurricane force winds, and that is going to drive in your direction over the next 30 to 45 minutes. So 234, it's 153 right now. That gives you about 41 minutes before that gets on top of you. We have noticed a little bit off and on the eastern side of this eye wall wanting to generate some stronger thunderstorm activity. You can actually see here as I zoom into the eastern side of this, we have 13 lightning strikes here within the last 15 minutes. Most of them over here. There's a couple over here on the northwestern side of that, which, by the way, is where the strongest of the winds are, the 140s, the 150s. That's out, thankfully, over the Gulf of Mexico. But in here, where you're seeing these lightning strikes, that's energy within that eye wall, and that's vigorously rising air within that eye wall to create the energy to make those lightning strikes and the thunder that you're likely hearing over Cape Coral right now. And hopefully nobody's on Sanibel, but they're seeing some lightning and hearing some thunder there as well. That's a sign of this. We may see a little bit more red build back into this area, so it will be a stronger wind and stronger rain event. Again, driven around Cape Coral. You can see a little bit of the beginnings of that here right along US 41. That's going to be tracking off to the northeast at about 9 miles an hour as well, along with the rest of the hurricane. So let's go ahead and put a track. We'll go from about right here, and we'll put it at 9 miles an hour off to the northeast, and this is only over the next 30 minutes. I'll go ahead and expand that to 60 minutes because we're going to have a lot of communities. We have some flooding I'm going to show you here. Let's go ahead and do that first, and then we'll show you the track here because I want to spend some time on that. This is flooding in Naples that you're looking at here, and again, this is, wow, that's incredible storm surge. The worst of the wind did not get into Naples. You had hurricane force winds, certainly, and even we've had over 100-mile-an-hour winds. But look at that. It's driving onshore, and you see all the flooding there as I stare at the monitor off to the right of where I'm standing right now because I'm watching it here with you. And as you see, that is a live picture. That's happening in real time. And while we're on this full screen, and of course the image froze, so I was going to explain the process of storm surge. It's a gradual thing. It builds gradually over time, and that water gets pushed gradually inland. But the longer this storm sits out over the Gulf of Mexico, like it is right now, the majority, I mean, a portion of it's onshore, but the majority of that storm sits over the Gulf of Mexico. The longer that happens, the slower the storm gets, the more of an opportunity those waves have to build, and the higher that storm surge is going to get, and the farther inland all that water is going to get pushed. We are tracking the rain band here on our live Doppler radar here at ABC7 and NBC2. This little area of the outer eye wall, which is not nearly as strong as you head up toward Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte and Northport, but we're still going to see some gusty winds out of this. It's going to be Cross Creek Golf and Country Club right there off of Daniels Parkway at 2:03 this afternoon. The Gulf Coast Town Center at 2:14, North Fort Myers 2:15, Pine Lakes at 2:16. The same for the River District in Fort Myers. We have a couple of cameras down there. Hopefully one of them is still going as this blows through because we'll get some decent images from there. Into Paseo at 2:19, Old Bridge Village at 2:28, Greens Edge Condominiums at 2:28, Herons Glen Golf and Country Club at 2:37, The Forum at 2:48, Botanica Lakes at 2:52, Colonial Country Club 2:53, Gilchrist also at 2:53. So what we're tracking here is, again, right here where it's a little bit weaker, but we're noticing the lightning starting to build, which signifies that this area of the eye wall may be getting just a little bit stronger as it pushes off to the northeast. I think those strongest of the winds, I think this may get to almost out to Gateway, but once you get beyond Gateway, I don't think you're going to see the strongest of the winds out that far towards Lehigh Acres and Alva and Buckingham and those areas. Yes, it's going to be windy, but not as strong as the areas that are listed on your television screen right now. So that's what we're looking at as far as the track of the rain and the wind band. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go over here and pop on our winds and see what kind of winds we're dealing with. And unfortunately, that's a It looks like that's a bad area of the storm here. We're getting some bad information from our radar, but we can go ahead and show you 72 miles per hour. We mentioned the River District in Fort Myers is one of our areas to get that that rain band, the outer eye wall, 72 to 82 miles per hour. There's 102 as we head up into Charlotte County, according to estimates from the Doppler radar. These are not actual weather instruments making these wind measurements here. It's the Doppler radar estimating with the data that it has. So that's what we're looking at right now for winds, anywhere between about 95 and 105 miles per hour on that northern side of the eye wall where you see this yellow. That's where we've been seeing a lot of lightning, but down towards Fort Myers River District, we're approaching hurricane force wind strength here as we get to 70 miles per hour, and then we kind of get this this bad information as you get down towards Iona and Sanibel and Estero, so we're not going to get real accurate wind predictions with that, unfortunately. But over here in Lehigh Acres, somebody wanted me to go ahead and specially mention Lehigh Acres. That's where I live. We're going to see tropical storm force winds. I mean, you see a 70-mile-an-hour wind here in Fort Myers. Looking at the spotty data that I see right here, if I had to estimate, we'll see 50 to 60 miles per hour in Lehigh Acres as that all drives by. Same thing down towards Estero. You're a little bit closer to that eye, so it would more likely be similar to Fort Myers on the range of 60 to 70 miles per hour for maximum sustained winds. And where's our live shot? Okay, we're going to go to Naples again. Our live shot back up and running. We wanted to show it to you here live. And look at that, the water, that storm surge pushing inland. And I'm trying to figure out what types of SUVs that those are, but I mean, they look pretty large. There's actually a pickup truck. If you look kind of at the top center, there's a pickup truck, at least the top of one, off there in the distance, and the water is up over that pickup truck. Now, this is the same shot earlier that I saw when we were doing the live report, right before we took it live to air. There was actually somebody's boat had come floating right down with the storm surge through all those cars on kind of the other side of that street right there in downtown Naples. And man, I'll tell you, this is a really awful storm surge event. I mean, we knew it was going to happen, but it doesn't make it any easier to deal with, certainly. And that's the view right now in Naples. We're dealing with the hurricane force winds, obviously north of there, up through Port Charlotte and Cape Coral and Punta Gorda right now. But that is the storm surge, and you're looking at it live right here on ABC7 and NBC2. Just an incredible view to look. And we're going to see more of this. I mean, this isn't even the beginning of the end. I mean, these onshore winds are going to continue through the afternoon and through the evening. And so we're going to get more pictures and video of this. And as I mentioned, the center of the storm is not past the Peace River yet. We don't have the storm surge event in Charlotte County yet, but that is coming. We're going to see similar, if not worse, images coming from Charlotte County as we are around the Naples area. That's what we're looking at right now as far as storm surge, the outer eye wall, where those winds and those rain bands are heading. Let's send it back over to NBC2, Allison and Rob.
Thank you, JP. And then one thing I want to note about that video we were showing in Naples with those cars flooded on the road there, if you were with us earlier, I'm sure you were, those cars have all moved. So the water is high enough to move the car, but it definitely has moved the cars. They're floating in the center of the road. They're not even parked anymore. The water will continue to increase. So the live look is back. It's a little choppy here, and there are just the waves of the ocean pushing on in. And he's pointing, that reporter from NBC News is pointing. Do you see how that one SUV is in the middle of the road? Do you see the 3 cars on the right there? Those were all parked against those bushes just moments before, and they're slowly starting to kind of meander around the ocean, the ocean is on the street right now, and that is just pushing on in. They will probably run into each other, and this is why we need to make sure that you guys are safe and not going out there. So the winds, you can see in his report there that it's not too breezy in Naples. The highest winds still remain around the center of the eye, and we're still having this storm just crawl on our coastlines. We just got another advisory from the National Hurricane Center, and the storm is still moving at 9 miles per hour. That's the only silver lining that we can get here. I'm sorry, can we listen to the NBC too? Yeah, let's go ahead and listen to the NBC reporter.
We're in a place that has really solid construction, so we're not seeing a lot of damage, but we are seeing doors, we are seeing cars pulling away, we are seeing random damage around here. We're seeing a lot of flooding, and that's going to be hours and hours more of this. Can't get rescue crews until the wind is down and this flood recedes. Now, the one good thing about flooding is that it tends, unless it's a structural problem like we saw in Houston a few years ago, where the infrastructure prevents it from receding, in places like this,
it's a little hard to hear what he's saying because we don't have his mic into our program, and we're just kind of hearing what the camera is saying. What I could gather him saying was, we're not seeing so much wind damage, is what we're seeing is just this water slowly destroy around the region. And when you see all the debris, that's going to be from anything that water is picking up and pushing into the streets there. So this will continue for Naples. I know the water has come up to a couple of feet, even beginning to the second story in parts of Barefoot Beach. This will continue for a little bit longer. I want to show you this radar image because it is pushing off to the northeast at 9 miles per hour with the latest advisory. These hourly updates are key. If we were to see that continue to slow down just a bit, that would be even more problematic than it is. So we still have a few more hours to go of just landfall. And then after that, we'll have a few more hours to go of more storm surge. And then those that are not seeing the storm surge just yet will continue to push off farther to the north. These are some of the estimates of the numbers that we're seeing just from radar sites, from the radar beam at this height, 140 mile per hour winds. We've seen reports of about 100 to 110. It will not weaken much as it makes its way closer to Boca Grande and North Captiva and Captiva. So those strong winds will continue. If you think that it's moved a little bit off to the east, maybe just a bit, it is moving off to the east because it's moving off to the northeast. So it will continue to nudge off to the north while just slowly moving a degree or so this way. So areas in Cape Coral and North Fort Myers, you're going to have that real strong wind still. You're not escaping the strong wind and the storm surge to follow. Right now, we have almost 90 mile per hour winds coming through Fort Myers Beach, through Iona McGregor, through parts of Shell Point as well. Here's a look at that time step of how long this is going to take. I do have more of a northeasterly track instead of a northeasterly track. So take these times again with a grain of salt, but I just want to give you a scope of how long this is going to take to move on through. And we were expecting this very prolonged, slow crawl off to the north and east. If you remember the storm south of Cuba, it had a forward motion of about 12 to 15 miles per hour. That would have speeded things up a lot faster in our region, and that would have changed, maybe saved a foot or so of the storm surge. So this is going to continue to move in. We're here at 6 to 6:30 with that back edge moving into Rotunda and the Cape Hayes Peninsula. Charlotte Harbor, again, still dealing with offshore winds. Once this pushes up, these winds that Naples is dealing with right now, the winds that are moving through Bonita, the winds that are moving through Island Park, Estero Bay, those are going to be pushing into your region as well. And the southerly winds might even come a little bit before that. The reason why I think Naples is dealing with the worst of it is because they got that southerly wind a lot longer than just the onshore wind. And we kept talking about the angle. Okay, we're going to go back to Naples. I think they have a more video. Do you want to listen in?
I mean, everybody's texting.
Okay, you don't have to listen in. So that's just another view. Did we ever find out what exactly road this is? We're still working on it. Okay, but we know how Naples is. We have those nice condominiums set up overlooking the beach. So this is close to the beach, but you see how high that water continues to push on in. Okay, there is a truck. Okay, you see the truck. Okay, so imagine that is a box truck there to the far bottom left-hand corner of your screen. That is starting to increase in water levels as well. That will most likely float away. You know, I barely see the cars that we were looking at before that I said, hey, these have moved. We're just closing in on those tops there. We're only a couple of inches from those being completely submerged, absolutely completely submerged. So this will and the water's kind of moving back. It's just, the waves are just incredible. And I know I'm saying waves, and these are not tidal waves. It's not like a tidal wave. It's not like a big thing that comes in, but this is the ocean. This is the Gulf of Mexico that's pushing in.
It looks like, for our friends who are listening to us on the radio for our simulcast with the Beasley Media Network, if you were to think of like a bathtub and like little kids' toys, how it, like a boat or would bob in the water, what we're watching right now on the screen, it'd be large cars. Allison pointed out that box truck. I believe I saw like a SUV Land Rover type car. There's been several four-door. They are bobbing in the streets of Naples right now.
Good
we are working with our neighbors in the newsroom to find out the exact location of this, but obviously this would be very close to the Gulf of Mexico shoreline.
I think you can see the Gulf of Mexico there in the way in the distance there. But at this point, the shoreline and this is becoming one and the same of the water level because it just continues to push on in.
And we want to stress we are not worried about the cars here. Our concern is the people that are in the line of the storm surge event that could happen later on this afternoon and this evening.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, yes, it's one thing to look at cars, but the reason people were ordered to mandatorily evacuate is because of what you see on your screen right now, the risk of life-threatening storm surge. And it could come to the point later on today or this evening in areas of coastal Lee County where the waters start rising too fast. And if you are in your house, you have to think about how you can get vertical. You know, you're seeing for yourself right now where we're seeing this surge flooding. The storm surge values will likely be greater in parts of Lee County, considering that Lee County is much closer to the eye of Hurricane Ian than these neighborhoods are here in the city of Naples as you take that live perspective. Allison.
So what's interesting about this and why is it so bad? Why have we never seen this before? And we kept trying to say how this storm was going to be so impactful. You know, there's been a lot of storms that come through Southwest Florida and everyone says, hey, you know, I've been through this storm. It's never, you know, never gets that bad. This was the worst case scenario that came to fruition. I went back. I looked at the data. I tried to find a Category 4 storm of this size. Yes, we had Charlie, but not this size. I tried to find a Category 4 storm that made landfall at this angle, and that's the angle and our bathymetry, what our coastlines look under the water, that sets us up for this type of scenario. We've mentioned this before, maybe you're just tuning in, but let me give you a little example of why Southwest Florida is so prone to storm surge. Imagine on the East Coast, it gets very deep very fast. That shelf under the water drops off. So imagine carrying a bowl of water versus a plate of water. We are the plate of water. We have a plate of water underneath our shelf. It is so much easier for that water to spill if you were carrying a plate of water versus carrying a bowl of water would be a little bit harder for that water to spill over. It can, but it takes a little bit more of that effort. We have very shallow waters, relatively speaking, to the rest of the Florida coastlines for a long time. We also have a shape of the coastline that kind of collects that water. You know, it's not going to be rounded where the water just it's hard to move in. Imagine holding your hand as a cup or a sea, and that water can just kind of sit in there as that water pushes in. We also have a slow moving storm, a powerful storm. The other analogy you can use is imagine you're in your pool and you want to splash some or move some water with your arm. If you have a larger arm, you're going to be able to move more water than if your arm is shorter. So this wind field is so expansive and the storm is moving so slow and the water so easily to come into our region. We were always concerned about the worst case scenario, and this is proving to be that worst case scenario. And like Rob mentioned, obviously cars are cars. We were trying to give a good picture of the magnitude of what we're seeing on the water here, with this water continuing to move, the power of the water that it can have pushing things around, like bobbing apples here really is what we're seeing. And we are going to get an idea of where this exactly is. And it just keeps on coming in, Rob.
Yeah, It's just relentless. And this is why we are so concerned about Lee County and Charlotte County potentially over the next several hours. Collier County is removed from the eye. If we could just for a moment to take the Doppler 2 source, you're watching this live feed from the Naples area. Naples is a distance away from the center of the hurricane. This here is the eye of the hurricane that I've circled here. This here is where the winds are onshore, pushing this salt water into the streets of Naples along the immediate coastline. Now, the worst of the storm will continue to move off to the north-northeast at, again, 9 miles per hour, so moving off in this direction here. But for what we're concerned about here is the winds are stronger the closer you get to the eye of the hurricane. So eventually these winds will continue to push this onshore push of water into these areas.
Right through
and as it backs up into areas like Punta Rassa, it will back up into areas of the Caloosahatchee River. And that's why we are so concerned over the next few hours of life-threatening saltwater inundation flooding in the form of storm surge.
Yeah, so if you look at the coastline, you see those arrows that Rob drew for you. So Naples is still almost, parallel to some of those southwesterly winds we've seen. If you look up through Estero Bay, places like Gladiolus, places like Iona, Punta Rassa, even now San Carlos Park, if we have enough of this water to continue to push on in, it will continue to get higher and higher. So do you see how the shape of that coastline changes?
Could the control room put Doppler 2 behind Allison Ray at the wall? It'd be easy for Allison to point this out. I'll maneuver the map, Allison.
Right.
You do the pointing.
So here we go. So, just popped up. There we go. So do you see how the shape of the coastline is? Imagine just holding your hand on a table and someone trying to splash some water in. You're not going to collect that much water. But if you hold your hand and cup it and someone splashes some water in, you might be able to collect it in your hand. This is what that's doing. It's going to collect it and push it all inland. So these areas we've seen that image from Barefoot Beach moving in over the pool there. This is all Estero Bay right here. Then we have some mangroves that can help limit some of that storm surge protection. That's why mangroves are so important. Imagine, and Dr. Wynn at FGC always gives a great example. He says, these roots just tangled. That's going to give the waves, break the waves a little bit. Do you see how those waves at Naples were just breaking and breaking? That those mangroves can kind of stop that wave breaking, and so just the water continues to move on in. We do have new video. This is storm surge in Bonita Beach. Okay, so look at this. This is moving on in. Bonita Beach just pushing on in. Nothing is there to stop that water from just pouring into those communities. So
it looks like that's from a Ring. If I see the logo in the upper left-hand corner, it looks like that might be from one of those Ring doorbell things. So. Wow.
That looks like, I guess that's in front of someone's house.
And look at how fast it's moving too. That's a decent speed there. So, it'll knock people off their feet. We saw from those streets of Naples, it's already pushing around box trucks and SUVs. So this is a rapid moving water that's going to do damage as this salt water spills up over the Gulf of Mexico and onto these coastal locations that are especially vulnerable to storm surge here up and down the coast of Lee County and Collier County most especially.
Yeah, so that's going to continue to push on in. So I'm not exactly what part of Bonita Beach that is, but we've already seen, if we could go back to the Doppler 2 computer, we've already seen images from near Barefoot Beach. Oh, okay, thank you, Rob. So let's get kind of the latest look of where the storm is right now. Can we do a couple velocity scans just to see how powerful that wind is in... Yeah, it just continues through parts of Minnesota Key, now pushing on in, and we still have, do you see how the storm just hasn't weakened? We still have 140-mile-per-hour winds. A lot of times with that land interaction, it can sometimes start to really taper off in a hurry, and it's not. That happened last year, actually, with Hurricane Dorian, just sat there on top and just stayed extremely strong for a really long time. Okay, so now we're going to Fort Myers Beach. I think this will be, our Diamond Head camera started losing service, oh man, a while ago. So these are gonna be our first images that we have of Fort Myers Beach. Once again, you see the water there, really, and that's why they had that mandatory evacuation for Fort Myers Beach. People weren't leaving, and that is concerning. I hope everyone is okay there. The water is high enough over the cars. We know that Fort Myers Beach, just a thunderstorm, you can't get on Estero Boulevard. It starts to be pretty wet pretty fast, and that water is up over the cars, and the elevation of Fort Myers Beach is not even, I would say, a foot. So we're looking at that water continue to move in to many homes that do not, newer homes have those elevation standards they have to build up or have to be a second story with the garage. There are many homes on Fort Myers Beach that are not to those standards. They're a little bit older homes that are just at that level that I'm sure have feet of water in them at this point, Rob.
We are juggling two very serious threats in Southwest Florida right now. What you see there, of course, with the life-threatening saltwater storm surge, inundation, flooding, but we also want to focus our attention on where the eye continues to move farther and farther on land, and that would be across areas of Charlotte County. So if we could take the Doppler 2 system and rework the camera here so we can use the interactive hand tracker. I do have some new information that I also wanted to pass along in the last few minutes. The National Weather Service has confirmed a wind gust of 126 miles per hour on Captiva, and that came, of course, with the eye wall, when the eye wall is now pushing toward the western side of Charlotte County. Now, it is likely that it's probably a touch weaker now than it was when it was producing those 126 mile per hour wind gusts on Captiva. But look, right now, where we had those 126 mile per hour wind gusts, Captiva is now in the dead center of the eye, so the wind has gone quite calm now, I would imagine, in areas of Captiva in comparison to what you had earlier, with again now a confirmed wind gust of 126 miles per hour on the Lee County barrier islands. The part of the storm that generated that wind gust of 126 miles per hour is now moving across areas of western Charlotte County. So if you are in Punta Gorda or Port Charlotte, Deep Creek, Lake Susie, and areas across southwest DeSoto, and if you're able to watch us in parts of southern Sarasota County, the worst of the weather now is right over top of your neighborhood. And the weather will continue to be very, very bad for at least the next 45 minutes as the leading edge of the eye wall continues to move to the north-northeast at only 9 miles an hour. It continues to be a slow-moving hurricane, which means the brunt of the worst of the eye wall in terms of the damaging winds that are moving across Charlotte County will be with us here for quite some time. Just a moment ago, Allison was showing you some of these wind velocity pixel queries here. Why don't we see it? I think we got an updated radar scan since Allison did that, so I'll pull this back out here. And again, based on what we're seeing, evidence out over the Gulf of Mexico of winds in excess of 130 miles an hour. That part of it here is moving more to the north-northeast, so that part of the storm likely moving toward areas of Sarasota County. If I could ask the producer to repeat that. All right, we have a live look right now at Englewood Beach. Go ahead and take that to perspective full. Wow, that is a big uptick in the wind as compared to the last time. In the last hour, we touched base with Englewood Beach. I want to point out, though, if you look at the direction that the palm trees are blowing, it appears to be still a very strong offshore wind because Englewood right now is on the leading edge of the eye wall. So for the time being, the air around the hurricane continues to push toward the Gulf of Mexico. As the eye continues to move farther on land, though, the winds will shift around and we'll see, wow, look at the rain in that video. For our viewers who are listening on our simulcast partners on the radio on 106.3, you're looking at a live perspective from our partners at the EarthCam network of a Englewood Beach perspective. It is a shot we show you quite often if you watch NBC2 News. It's oftentimes a beautiful, beautiful section here of Englewood and Charlotte County, and right now some very, very, very strong winds bouncing the camera around quite a bit. Visibility is very, very low, and you can see here for yourself. If you can't see because the electricity is out and you're listening to the simulcast on the radio, you just imagine what you would think of when you see a hurricane video with palm trees moving and bending. But it looks like, at least for the time being, those palm trees are hanging tight. But it's tough for things like trees to stand up to winds that are 126 mile per hour plus. So this is going to lead to pretty devastating storm damage, especially here in the next 45 minutes across the western side of Charlotte County, and that includes the Englewood area as you look live there toward the Gulf of Mexico. If I may, if I could ask the control room, let's come back out here and talk about the impacts for the people who are on land here. We were earlier pixel querying some of these points. Based on where the radar is at, we're still seeing evidence here up and aloft where the radar beam is hitting the raindrops of winds in the atmosphere here that are coming in at higher than 130 miles an hour. Based on the scans here just over top of Burnt Store Marina toward Pirate Harbor, as the radar beam is shot out from the radar tower at the point in the atmosphere, which is in this case is a few thousand feet up, it's showing the winds are blowing at 139 miles an hour. Now at the surface, it's typically a touch lower, but because we're dealing with the eye of a hurricane here, and we have evidence of the sustained winds around the eye still at 155 miles per hour, you know, there could be some extremely serious wind damage here in areas of western Charlotte County as the eye wall, the leading edge of the eye wall, moves further into areas of western Charlotte County and over the mouth of Charlotte Harbor and areas here eventually toward Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda. For folks who are watching right now in Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda, I would imagine the electricity has to be out at this point. Current time is 2:22 here. What I want to do is lapse the radar back. We'll pull this back. Actually, I'll have to do it over here. Give me one moment to reset that manually. We'll do a quick radar relapse here for folks in Charlotte County to give you some perspective. If you're lucky enough to still have electricity, you can see this visually. Otherwise, for the folks who are listening to the radio, we're showing you the radar scans here in a storm lapse of the last 30 minutes, and you can see just very, very slow movement here. The storm itself is only moving at 9 miles an hour. That is slow, and the slower the hurricane moves, the more time it's going to have to push these potentially, you know, dangerous, obviously dangerous, but potentially catastrophic winds into areas of western Charlotte County. And if you think back, there's been a lot of comparisons, of course, to Hurricane Charlie. Hurricane Charlie followed along an awfully similar path here, of course, as you know, moving across the Charlotte Harbor and then up across the Peace River and then right across neighborhoods in Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte, caused catastrophic damage. But, you know, physically, Ian is much, much bigger than Charlie ever was. Charlie never was physically this large. So more impacts from the wind with this one, as it's, you know, with a high-end Category 4 here, wind gusts and well in excess of Category 5 strength as this one continues to move around the area. One more thing I wanted to mention, or actually instead I'm going to toss things over for a moment to ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist John Patrick. John, what are you seeing from your angle?
We have been getting in, of course, images from all across the area this afternoon. I wanted to share a few of those with you. This one comes from Bonita Beach Road, and we had some video earlier of Bonita Beach, and look at that. We've got some trees blown, and we've got a car underwater there from Mark Bennett on Bonita Beach Road there. Thank you for sending that one in. The next one is coming in from Naples. This is another storm surge picture from Heather Courier. You can see off there in the distance, it looks to me like Naples Bay, and the storm surge that has come up out of the water and is inundating some of those areas there. Next one here, we've got Emma Casey, also in Naples, and if you look right in here, there's a boat capsized. And if you were watching us earlier, we had some video when we were taking a live shot of Naples. There was actually a boat that rode the storm surge down the street. So this is very powerful water that we are dealing with here, and this is going to continue to come on shore and inland as we go through the rest of the afternoon and into the night. Of course, the winds, the powerful winds, busting pool cages. This one from Mary Raymond in Cape Coral, where we have clocked over 100-mile-per-hour winds with this storm so far. Here's another one, Bayfront Place in Naples. Again, right near Naples Bay, Tin City, and those areas, Rebecca Smith, and you can see the water coming up there as well. So we are looking at some potentially catastrophic, I mean, it already is catastrophic, storm surge across the area. So let's go ahead and we'll switch over to the other weather computer. I forget which one I was on, either one or two. Go to the other one. Yeah, that one. This one's got the live radar on it, and as Rob is mentioning, some of the strongest winds right now are entering Punta Gorda, over Port Charlotte, over Northport. These are going to be heading very shortly towards Deep Creek and up toward Fort Ogden. Let me go ahead and put a track here for you, because this is going to be moving into Sarasota, already into Sarasota County, just north of Northport there. But this is going to be moving off at 9 miles an hour to the northeast, and we'll extrapolate that out to 120 minutes instead of 30. And there you go. We're going to look for this to get up towards Arcadia here. Fort Ogden, for some reason, it's not putting those city names on there on this particular track. But I can tell you our time right now is 2:26. It's going to take a little while to get into Arcadia, but this is going to be swinging up, pretty much right up US 17, going from Charlotte into DeSoto County. Oh, okay. We are looking at that to, okay, so that's why the time thing isn't working right now. All right, so we'll get back to tracking that in just a moment, but I can go ahead and show you on our future scan of this, we can go ahead and show you that by the time we get to 3:26, there's our time right now, 2:26. We can track it if my little forecast cone doesn't want to work. There's always a second option. So right now we're looking at this outer eye wall, this very heavy rain and wind event that's happening right now, Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda, all the way up to Northport, El Jabin, the Cape Hayes Peninsula, all the way out toward Englewood, Manasota Key. They're getting the worst of the winds right now that Rob just plotted for you. This, over the next hour, watch where it goes. It is going to continue off to the northeast. We're going to drag it out here. By the time we get to 2:45, you can see it's approaching Deep Creek. As we get into 3 o'clock, you see it's still slowly moving past Deep Creek. Again, this is only moving 9 miles an hour, and it's still going to be pounding Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda. By the time we get to 3:30, about 1 hour from now, you should be getting out of the initial eye wall. You'll have the bottom side or the south side of that system to go through, but you'll have a little bit of a calmer area as we get through 3:30 for a little while. Mike, what were you telling me in my ear? Oh, I-75 at Tucker's Grade. We have a live look from there. Let's go ahead and take a look outside right now, and you can see our FDOT camera there. This is, of course, Charlotte County. Nobody on the roads, thankfully. You should not be on the roads. You should be in your safe place in Charlotte County right now because you're getting the worst of the event. Looks like the camera just froze up there. So this eye wall event is going to continue for another about hour. It's going to be on top of you. And as we go through that hour, you can expect that wind to just pound you to the tune of about 90 to 110 miles per hour, as I estimated here off of the Doppler radar. The strongest of the winds, as we've been tracking, are just barely staying offshore, but we have already seen 110, between 110, and you heard out on Sanibel, 126 miles per hour for the maximum sustained winds. Those even aren't the strongest of the winds with this storm. If your power does go out, I want to remind everybody that you can listen to us on the radio. Our partners at Renda Broadcasting and Beasley Media, kind enough to put our television signal on the radio on 98.9 WGUF in Naples, Gator Country 101.9, 104.7 The Mix, Sunny 106.3, B103.9, and 96 K-Rock, which is 96.1. So all of those stations, if the power does go out, we of course have our ABC7 and our NBC2 News apps. You can stream the video on your phone, but if you want to conserve battery, you can go to any of those radio stations I just mentioned and listen to our simulcast there. Let's send it back over to Rob and Allison over at NBC2.
So I do want to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to take a look at our Englewood beach cam and see how conditions continue. You can see the part of that storm, or the eye, is still pushing through. That right front part of that eye is still pushing on through. The water's going to continue to push on in. That's a live look at Englewood Beach. Really hard to see much going on there. The wind is picking up, over 100-mile-per-hour winds possible with this as it continues to push on in. Before I show you radar, I also want to show you some of the wind speeds and why that's important that we're still seeing these winds continue to increase. Let's go to the AWS computer briefly. We are seeing the winds continue to pick up in Fort Myers, Pinchers Marina. That wind is now increased to 108. That was at 100 just about an hour ago, and the winds continue to increase. All right, now I want to show you First Alert Live Doppler. We showed you that image along 75 near Tucker's Grade. That camera did stall because we lost service there. This is what it's going through, that brunt of the eye moving into Punta Gorda right now. Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, Cleveland, Riviera Lagoons. These are areas that need to make sure that you are where you need to be. If you still have power, put the volume up, head into a safe area. Do not get video, do not take pictures right now. These are the areas that you need to take cover because for the next hour, because it's moving off to the northeast at only about 9 miles per hour. And this big swath of very heavy rain and gusty winds and the lightning. Can you believe how strong this lightning, or how much lightning there still is at this point, even inland, as much land interaction as it's had, it's not starting to diminish. So that will be there for another hour. We want to go back to Naples and see how the conditions are still getting worse there. Are we going to listen in?
Naples, that's not sustained wind, but that is enough to do substantial damage. And the important part, Katie, is despite all of this flooding and despite this storm surge, which we're now thinking might be up to 8 feet, this is not the worst of it. There are places scheduled to get 12 or 18 feet of storm surge or water and much higher winds. We're not even in the cone of the hurricane. That's the remarkable thing. We're still getting remarkable force because of where we are.
You could kind of hear him say, hey, we're not even in the cone. And that's what we were trying to really stress to you guys before the storm made landfall, that even if you're not in the cone, there were still a lot of impacts, specifically the storm surge impacts with those onshore winds just south of the cone. The cone, the center of the storm, that's what the cone tracks, just where it could make landfall, just where that center could go. That's moving through Charlotte County right now. It's on top of Port Charlotte. It's on top of Punta Gorda. The rain up there is continuing. The storm surge there, not there just yet. That storm surge follows the storm because of our shape of our coastline and where it's hitting us. So that will continue. They're kind of doing a little bit more of a view of what they're seeing there. I think that's the end of the road there, because you can kind of see the water hitting the building and then returning. So that they must be kind of at the end there. Let me show you First Alert Live Doppler. These are pushing into Fort Ogden, Arcadia. You guys are next. You're going to have some powerful winds there. The back edge of this is not going to be making landfall for a second time until about 4:30. So that's about 2 hours from now. We'll start to see the rest of the storm with also 110 mile per hour winds. It's just as strong on that westerly side, push onshore. So 2 hours from now, that will continue to push on in. I want to show you how big this storm is and its impact. So I kind of put the measurement here from the top of the storm to the bottom. We're over 240 miles just with rain impacts. And then the winds could be a little bit breezier than that. And at times the storm was a little bit wider. What was so damaging about this storm, and I was mentioning yesterday during that eyewall replacement, is as it got stronger, the wind field started to expand. That increases the wind threat no matter where it makes landfall. It's not just the winds are just kind of confined to a small area. It's expanding farther to the north, farther to the south. And then that also, because you have that expanding wind field, it extends the storm surge threat as well. So it was just these worst case scenario. Every time we looked at it yesterday, there was nothing going in our favor, and there's still nothing going in our favor, except for that it's still moving at 9 miles per hour. That's only what we have right now. Still just light to moderate rain, maybe heavy rain at times for parts of Bonita, but it's the southerly winds that are problematic for you. Marco, the rain is over, but the storm surge will continue with those southerly winds until it gets a little bit farther to the north. If we can go back to that Naples image, or if we have that, let's go back to the Naples video right now that we have. So the water is going to only get a little bit higher. And I think, Rob, you said that the high tide for Naples is this afternoon.
Give me 1 second to pull that up, Allison.
Okay.
Yeah, Doppler 2, if you want to take it full there, 2:45 for Naples.
And I mentioned this too. I mean, the high tide and low tide, because this is such a prolonged event, it was going to come regardless. It wasn't, hey, is this storm going to hit at landfall? Because it's so slow moving, or is it going to make landfall during high tide? Because it's so slow moving, it was regardless to happen. So that high tide at 2:45, just about 10 minutes from now for Naples, Marco Island at 3:21. And we'll see how that water continues to move inland, Rob.
Don't be led into a false sense of security in Naples that you see your low tide cycle comes up at 8:36. The onshore winds continue overnight tonight, so that surge will not be able to pull out as fast as like a regular high and low tide cycle would be able to do. I do want to turn our attention back to Doppler 2, and I wanted to make sure folks in Charlotte County and Sarasota County are hankered down here, because the worst of it here with the northern part of this eye wall, again, is lifting across the western side of Charlotte County. This is a look again at those winds aloft. So notice how we're seeing evidence of winds aloft, up and above the surface of more than 100 miles an hour right now over Charlotte Harbor, near Pirate Harbor, and then off the coast of Manasota Key, there's evidence of winds aloft, up and above the Gulf of Mexico, in excess of 120 miles an hour. What I wanted to do here is walk back in time for the last hour. So this is at 1:36. Notice how the wind speeds were behaving across western Charlotte and over the Gulf of Mexico. We'll go forward in time, bring it to the top of the hour here just about at 2 o'clock. Notice how the winds very subtly evolve but get faster over top of the Gulf of Mexico. And then as time continues to evolve here, look at how these wind speeds are picking up over the Gulf and moving towards shore And this then brings us up to the current time, again with evidence of winds aloft at 96 miles an hour up and above the surface of the earth right now over areas like Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte. We have had confirmed wind gusts on the surface of up to 126 miles per hour in Captiva when this part of the eye wall moved over top of the barrier islands. Captiva right now is dead center in the center of the eye where the winds have gone calm as the worst of this continues to move here toward the north. Now it's not just in in Charlotte County where the terrible winds are moving across the area. This is a live look right now from the tower camera on top of the Doppler radar in Fort Myers, where again in Fort Myers at the International Airport, we've had confirmed wind gusts up and above 80 miles an hour. I believe our producer Tez, we're going to go back to the Naples camera.
So apparently that truck or that van we were watching has now flipped over. I don't see it right. Oh, we can't see it. It's probably a little bit lower. I do want to read something that one of the hurricane hunters tweeted, and this could kind of give some perspective as we continue to watch that video from Naples. This is Nick Underwood, and he's one of the hurricane hunters. I actually met him personally a few years back. I mean, these are brave guys that fly through these hurricanes. He's been flying for 6 years, and he says that, and he flew overnight into a night storm, and we've been talking about the amount of lightning that the storm continues to have, but also did have, and that's always a sign of intensity of this hurricane. And he posted a picture that I'll try to get up in a little bit, but it was a little bit light. It looks like it was a light. And he said for the past 6 years, this was the worst eye he's ever seen. There was so much lightning that it looked like a light during a day flight because the lightning was lighting up the sky so much. Never seen an eye so impactful. So that's coming from someone that has flown in and out of hurricane eyes as a job day in and day out during hurricane season, that is. And he said he's never seen a more powerful eye. So it was just barely Category 5, just, I mean, you know, 2 miles per hour. That's just kind of a not much of a difference there, but this continues. Rob, we still have that lightning continuing. The good news, okay, here's a little slither of good news. Not as much lightning on the southwest part of the eye. Maybe we're starting to see this hopefully weaken a little bit, not much though.
If I may, since we're talking about this storm surge event in progress right now, I wanted to focus on the parts of Fort Myers where the storm surge event is beginning, and then I'll send things over to my colleague John Patrick over at ABC7. So what I wanted to do here is I'm going to take this clicker just for a second, Ellie. If we could go out to Doppler 2 graphics here at the weather wall, the storm surge event that you see unfolding right now in the city of Naples is moving northward up and along the coast of Collier County, and is eventually going to overspread areas of western Collier or western Lee County. This includes the storm surge risk that will be going up in areas like Fort Myers Beach, Cape Coral, and Fort Myers, because the eye